No, we're okay. I'll just do it.
Mission in.
Yeah, I know, but is he supposed to be here now? I've not spoken to him since the competition.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for arriving on time. I'm sure some other people will be joining us, but in the meantime, we'll kick off this first session of the day. I'll turn things over to Roland, who will introduce the panelists, and we'll get started. And remember, if you have comments or questions that you would like to raise, have them in mind, and then when the time is right, you'll come up here to the front and become part of it. Roland, before we go.
Well, thank you very much, Jay. Good morning, everybody. It has been a rough day yesterday. I think it's going to be a little bit better today, and I think the overall topics are just as challenging. I have to make a few announcements in matters of housekeeping, and the first announcement would be our live stream yesterday was working 100%. Not huge audiences, as a matter of fact, but then we are very much a niche market. Now today, as we try to hook everything back up, hey, you're not allowed to live stream anymore. Why? We were asking. Well, then we figured out. One of the clips that we showed yesterday did have copyright issues, and then they block you. So that's to our community out there that just shoots from the hip and thinks this is not going to happen. YouTube is controlling very much content. They have systems that monitor, and if you infringe on copyrights, step number one, you're getting shut down, and then getting back up is relatively difficult. In any case, we think we have sorted out again, and for the future, what do we learn? Copyright is an issue and should be addressed properly by governing bodies, by private operators, by everybody. And then, as yesterday, our meal plan, I'm assured that today's lunch will be warm. So we made a valiant effort yesterday, and I cannot repeat myself enough. That we were able to pull this off was really thanks to a bunch of very, very good people, friends, the mayor's secretary. I mean, nobody wants to work on a holiday. Yesterday was a holiday, and because it was a holiday on a Sunday, they repeated today, and the same thing again. I mean, we have a former tourist director helping us. We have the secretary of the mayor helping us. It's all kept in-house here. Times are these, more or less. Then this is an important announcement. We're making Summit. I mean, we're getting there slowly but surely. I think 6 more hours and we're done. And as I said yesterday, we really overextended ourselves in making this happen. I mean, we were never really reasonable people, but really, so what we did is we launched this crowdfunding initiative, and we would appreciate any type of contribution that you feel, hey, we can afford that, and it will help their cause a little bit to balance our budgets. And that much for the housekeeping remarks. Now, please, session number 7. Can we change, David? Session number 7, the Achilles heel. It's quite simply put about the only thing that keeps indoor skydiving from being a total success. That's the weak points. In my opinion, very, very important weak points. And these weak points revolve around costs. And we all know that costs are significant. And we have assembled here a very nice and competent panel. Unfortunately, our colleague Shorty Messeguet, Windor, who was supposed to be talking about green energy, he's not here yet. He could still make it. And let's hope he does. Then, on my right, we have Jan from the Czech Republic, the maker of one of the biggest brands in indoor skydiving, the brain behind it. You're an engineer by trade. Tell us a little bit about that.
About what?
About your career. I mean, you're a flow engineer.
Yeah, well, I'm hydraulic engineer, so that's a bit similar to the wind flow, but actually all this special stuff on aerodynamic, it's really done by the professionals of aerodynamics in our team. So I am just looking from bit side and trying to understand it.
I'm sure you do. And what was really remarkable about Jan, he said, well, we're already working on our next project in case wind tunnel is not going to really prosper much more. And you know what his next project is? He is working on mini breweries.
Microbrewery technology, yeah,
Okay.
but I would say this is a separate
All
unit.
right.
It's more like fun, actually. It's not it can be combined very well. I think the community of people flying in the wind tunnel, they quite often enjoy the beer as well, but I mean, we are not mixing it yet.
All right, then we have Joel. Joel, you present yourself a little bit to our audience.
10 years in the industry. Been working in pretty much all areas. I started off very, very basic, operating tunnels, and then moved to managing, and then operating companies. And then I found a few other people with slightly different skill sets that have also been directors of wind tunnels, and we developed a consultation company. Since then, we've done various different projects, and we've been continuing that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We have from France, nearby Bordeaux, we have Vince,
Yeah.
please.
So I've been working for more than 12 years in the sports innovation for Decathlon. And then I'm not coming from skydiving at the beginning, so I just discovered indoor skydiving in a team meeting. I just fell in love with it, so I decided to make a contribution for the problem of the price of the practice. So I tried to make something up.
Yep. Then we have Oscar.
Yes, short introduction. I'm from the Netherlands, and I don't consider myself in industry a bit similar to you. I'm a designer, aerodynamicist, consultant for wind tunnels, but I have experience in dozens of other fields as well, bicycles, cars, and such. And in the past, I worked a lot on automotive wind tunnels as well, so I have a lot of knowledge of complex and bigger tunnels than the skydive tunnels. And with Actiflow, I designed a tunnel that's built in Utrecht, the only double tunnel, and I worked on rebuilding several other tunnels, renovation projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being here. Let's make this really as thinking out the box as possible. Yeah. And I was hoping to get this started to show up here with a few figures, really substantiated figures. I had the opportunity in Switzerland through a good friend of mine to actually have power consumption of a wind tunnel analyzed on the basis of, they call it load sheets. That's familiar to all of you, like energy consumption over time. And that allows a specialist to make an analysis, and then afterwards, based on that analysis, make recommendations. There are certain systems in place that a lot of the grid operators are using to give consumers the option of trading in some of their flexibility for better prices. And Unfortunately, the one wind tunnel that I had picked to provide these load sheets, they just never came around. And, in the end, we had to improvise this a little bit. Now, Paul Nickley is this friend of mine. He's basically the crisis manager of Swiss Grid, and Swiss Grid is huge, a small country. Swiss is a powerhouse in power because we're producing more than what we use. And now I brought this gentleman together with an operator of a wind tunnel in Winterthur, Tobias Oertle, and we had them do a conversation on, hey, what can we do to bring costs down? And we're just going to show you the start. It turned into a 1-hour conversation, and very productive, very topical, I think. But we don't have 1 hour. So we're just going to show you 1 minute now. You get the idea. And then I'm going to be addressing, probably, other than you, probably the audience as well, because I know that some of you guys are already doing things. And we'll take it from that angle. So here is this conversation of a tunnel operator and the crisis manager, CEO of Swiss Grid. And that's how it happened. Can you play the video, please?
Mein Name ist Tobias Oertle, ich bin der Geschäftsführer vom Windwerk in Winterthur. Wir haben Ende 2018 eröffnet, also sind am 8. Dezember vorletztes Jahr in Betrieb gegangen und jetzt gut 1 Jahr in Betrieb.
Ja, mein Name ist Paul Nickley. Ich bin der Krisenmanager von Swissgrid. Swissgrid ist der schweizerische Übertragungsnetzbetreiber, also die betreiben das ganze Hochspannungsnetz der Schweiz und verteilen so den Strom an alle Standorte.
Reguliert das ja auch ziemlich, oder?
Das ist reguliert, das ist übrigens seit 2009 ist das ein offener Markt, das heißt auch für Kunden, die eben größere Strommengen verbrauchen, heißt das, sie können den Strom frei einkaufen, bei Lieferanten, an der Börse, wo auch immer. Das ist für die großen Kunden jetzt die Möglichkeit, auch hier auf dem Markt etwas die Preise zu überschauen.
Da hätte ich eine Frage, weil...
All right, that was the beginning of a 1-hour conversation. I really think you will have to watch it. It's very interesting, the points that are being raised. Swiss Grid, it's like NASA a little bit. You go there, you're impressed. And there are many ways that can be used to reduce your expense on power consumption. The most significant, and obviously that all depends a little bit which country we're talking, there is something called control energy. Control energy is basically a trade-off with your grid operator. You're saying, well, you can call on me to actually shut down my operation for a few minutes for the length that you stipulate. In return, I will then qualify for better rates. Can I address this to the tunnel operators here? Who is doing something like this already? Can you raise the hand? That's what I figured. From Germany, is Boris here? No. Okay, obviously it took me a while to read up on it, and then I talked to some of the operators. Jochen, Schweizer Arena, they have an energy consumption just for the tunnel portion of probably, well, in euros, probably about 400,000 euros. In their best year, it was savings of roughly 60,000. Not possible, you're saying? Not enough?
I'm spending a lot of money on power. Too much.
too much. No, but like then they saved 60 or 70,000 euros with this control energy. It's too much. We should have brought you guys up here. Simon, come on. I mean, no, please. I mean, honestly, I knew we had to basically address this to the operators. But can you, Jay, can you give Simon or Manu, whoever.
You want to talk about power?
No, let's not get too technical, and don't threaten me. All right, go ahead.
So power it's only about the third or fourth most expensive thing. Cost of money is expensive to build a tunnel. Rent is expensive depending where you are. Labor, of course, is the most expensive. And then power normally comes in from the operators who are here, probably sort of third or fourth normally. So with the power, what we're finding, we have a whole energy department almost. We're buying power all over the world. And the most expensive place to buy it is Perth, Australia, and in California. So we've written software now for our operators, so which we now deployed in most of our tunnels. And that decides how much power we're using, because you pay for power normally on capacity. So you buy a certain amount of capacity, and then you buy the kilowatt hour. And then the kilowatt hour tends to be, depending which market you're in, about half of what you're going to end up paying per kilowatt hour. The rest is all on social taxes, on feed-in tariffs, on green energy taxes, putting back into the grid, distribution. Literally in a power bill in the UK, we get 20 different lines of costs. And we would average maybe in the UK, which is quite expensive, at about 11 pence per kilowatt unit. And that includes the capacity charges. So if we can reduce the capacity we require, so for instance, a 14-foot tunnel, we would take a capacity of maybe 800 kilowatts at any possible time, could we maximize in a half hour. And that would be the same in Paris. So just so you know, Paris 14-foot tunnel, we pay about 204,000 euros a year, and we do about 4,500 hours.
So that's half of what Jochen Schweitzer pays in Europe.
Yeah, so that's a pretty efficient tunnel. And we're now going into battery technology as well. So partly for the Chinese market, when you go into China, there's less power available from the grid. So you need to look at sort of topping out maybe at a megawatt, and then if you need more than that, then you would take it out of batteries. And we're doing the same in California, where we've got batteries in some of our tunnels already.
Which also, like I read up on that, you buy them from Tesla. It's a major investment, a battery like that.
Yeah, Tesla's the domestic side of it almost, and we're really working with technology providers out of Shenzhen.
What really amazed me, I mean, I'm not a power consumer like a wind tunnel, but yes, I have floor heating and things like that, and obviously it's different hours, different prices, but the dynamics of this energy market is such that is really, it's stunning. It's like a stock exchange, demand, and...
One of the most interesting things is what we call the triads, and they have different names in different places. But all the energy providers look at what you're going to use at the maximum time, which is normally when people come home from school and they put the kettle on in the winter countries, and then it's the biggest aircon time that you're going to use in the summer countries, in the hot countries, Australia, California. And if you can minimize your flying in that time, that will affect your rates for the whole year. So we typically know that that's going to be about 5 o'clock. And we know when the triad days are going to come, and we never fill those, we never book anything, and everybody can then take stuff at last minute. So we now have pro-flyer deals that they can come in, but they know that at the drop of a hat, we're going to switch them off and they're not going to work.
That's
And so we just
Control energy.
don't fly
Right.
at that time. And then we can save about £60,000 a year on each of those tunnels.
Excellent. I mean, this is, we probably should have brought you in from the very beginning. I mean, obviously, you're the biggest operator. You have this internationality that nobody else has. And you said the highest prices are Australia, the city of Perth. Where is it the cheapest in terms of kilowatt hour?
Probably the Middle East.
The Middle East.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cheap. And if it isn't, they don't care anyway. So, we're using 7,200 kilowatts potential at the 32-foot in Abu Dhabi. So I don't really think that's high on their agenda, what the power's going to cost them.
I have, is Paul Mayer here? Because in his operation, there is this, I think, fine print that from this hour to this hour, we have the right to kind of shut down. That's also because of that.
The same sort of thing.
In any case, I think what is to be learned for an operator, most of them already know it, is there are ways of keeping your eyes on the market, of negotiating deals, and there are some guys in this industry that I've met now personally. I mean, they're like bankers. They, whoa, take it, it's cheap. I'll give you that much for it. And this puts you in a good situation in your negotiations with the power company. Like Switzerland, it's outrageous. They have 900 different power companies, private power companies, and they all have different policies. So you can play one against the other and probably get better deals. And that's not everywhere like this, but these energy markets are opening up. You said before, obviously, it's only the fourth or the third factor in expenses. But also, there isn't much you can do in terms of labor, of the staff you employ. I mean, you cannot lower their rates or reduce their numbers significantly. But here, this is something you can do something about. No? Thank you very much, Simon. I think we can leave it at that. The whole interview, or it's not an interview, it was meant to be a conversation between two friends. They really did this well. If you can stick with just reading subtitles for, it's not 45 minutes, I would say. It's worth your while, because storage-wise, I mean, there are calculations you can make. When is storage really an option? I mean, right now in most parts in Switzerland, it's simply too expensive, the hardware. But they already anticipate the reduction in prices there, and then I know Winter Tour, they will probably by the end of this year buy their first storage unit. Okay, now what in terms of energy, in terms of other ways of bringing operational costs down, what would you think is an option that an operator has to improve on the status quo?
I think cost reduction can really be applied to pretty much any aspect of the company, even before you even set up. But if you're talking about the actual operations, there's really everything that you can look at. For me, there's a few key areas which you should focus on. You should focus on understanding where you are. Tunnels are international, and things work differently wherever you are. So, for an example, in one country, it may be a brilliant idea to outsource. You might want to outsource your staff, instructors, receptionists, cleaners, everyone. That may be the best thing you can do for that particular tunnel. In a different country, that may be the worst thing you can do. That may cause much higher costs. You may be much better off having all in-house staff. So one of the first things you should really look at is the place that you're at, the culture, the laws within that country, to see how things work best in that particular place. Even when you don't really know yourself, it's quite simple to look at how the companies, not tunnel companies, but the other well-run companies within that area are operating, because most things cross over. I think the other big point is simply looking at every expense that you do have, working out how you can get providers for energy or even Wi-Fi or all these other little things that you have to pay for, which companies can provide you the best service for the cheapest costs. And then everything else, heating can sometimes be a massive aspect within a company. Working out how to have the best technology to get the cheapest heating, how to maximize your heating. I mean, every tunnel normally has closed days. Do we need to be operating the heating during those days? Can we bring it up to the correct temperature without that? Many tunnels have vastly different opening hours and different amounts of customers. Is the tunnel maximizing their opening hours? If you have slightly less customers, is it worth condensing your days down? Do you close on more days and open for longer hours so you can have the same staff working slightly longer shifts and not create extra costs for that way? So then, like I said, looking at all different aspects and seeing where you can save the money is very, very important. Then I think the next biggest thing is then the people you have within the company, within the tunnel itself.
Staff.
Because it's great to have plans and processes in place to be able to save money within your company. But if you don't have the people who have the motivation to be able to pull off the plan that you set in motion, then it's not going to be successful. So it's very important to find people that are on the same wavelength as the operators themselves a little bit, that can actually be driven enough to do the things which are going to help the company save money.
Thank you very much. One question in terms of staff. What would you consider average size for an average size tunnel? Number of hours of operation obviously being the decisive factor.
Mm-hmm.
How would you address that?
Again, it is down to the particular project. And the technology in which you use, in fact. There's a lots of technology out there now where you can actually minimize the staff required during the day, and sometimes that can be very beneficial. I mean, generally speaking, I'm pretty sure every operator knows the minimum kind of staff that you need for instructing. You need one person spotting, you need one person operating. The majority of the time. Sometimes there is a way to actually, for pro flies to be able to cut out the tunnel operator in certain circumstances. Then there's the first timers. You might need someone to be getting them ready, getting them kitted, and then obviously it's quite tiring work, so you might need someone to be taking a break. If you're fully booked, you can get away with 4 or 5 in the circulation. There isn't really much necessity to be going over that if you've planned things and the processes properly. With not so busy tunnels, you can get away with much less, depending on the circumstance.
Thank you very much. Now, Jan, you're an engineer. You're a brilliant mind and thinking in categories not many people think. You look at this and is it that sometimes at night you wake up and what could I do to make it more whatever efficient? And are these thoughts on your mind?
Well, that's actually the principle of what we are doing. We try to, of course, because the energy is the issue. I think this is the principle of all producers to do it as efficient as possible. But this wind tunnel business is working already for a few decades, and I think a lot of improvements was already done. And I have the feeling if there is not some really brilliant idea of flying, not because of propellers, but whatever other, that there is not much possibilities to do it even more expensive, even more saving energy. So even more expensive it is, but that was belongs here. So yeah, I mean, we are still trying to play a little bit with tuning of ventilators. We are analyzing the flow conditions and flow consumption for different way of flying, and then we are trying to adjust maybe the blades on the ventilators for the optimum conditions. It also very much depends on the position where the wind tunnel is built, because building in Colombia, 2,400 meters above sea level, it's completely different story than doing it here in Empuria Brava. So there is quite a lot of other parameters and ideas which really play important role in optimizing the wind tunnel and its consumption. Of course, there is a big deal about the aerodynamics, but I think that there is really limited options now to do it better. There are some necessary elements which are along the circulation of the air, like the turning vanes, safety net, and others, which has to be there for just because of the principle and aerodynamics. And then we cannot fight very much with the physical loss, so there are some energy losses by the friction, by the turbulences, and we can just minimize them. But there is you know, this game nowadays, I think that we are speaking about single percentage of saving of energy on optimizing of some small things. So what I think it's exactly about the optimization in operation, taking some, I mean, cheaper time of the flying. For example, in Denmark, there is already, I don't know if it is in more countries, there is kind of automatic change of the price of the electricity according what kind of sources are giving the energy. So once the windmill starts to make more energy, then immediately you are charged by a different rate than before. And these are, I think, the places where maybe the software of the tunnel can really come and give some advantage, maybe using the batteries, as you mentioned, and with the cheaper energy, make some reserve. But the disadvantage is that it's difficult to predict, actually.
Right. Right. Oscar, your angle on it?
You know, you call it the Achilles heel, but as we're transitioning into sustainable sources everywhere, wind, solar, water, at certain points there will be so much sustainable sources of electricity. Especially solar, wind, those are very erratic sources. It's either there or it's not, and when you have it, you always have too much. And what we basically do now, of course, there's the open market, you can buy the certificates, you can trade them, but still a very high percentage of energy is basically dumped. They need to get rid of the overpower in wind and in solar. And when you're dumping energy, why not dump it in a wind tunnel? So you can also turn it around and see a wind tunnel as a way, look, Simon already said, pick your hours well, but you could also go one step further and negotiate a deal with the net companies to have a happy hour or so when there's overproduction and there's free energy and people can fly for free or so, and make it so that it's very clear that you're using excess energy in certain hours of the day. And I think one of the main considerations is where you put your tunnel. So if you put your tunnel on a location where you're near the grid, near overproduction, near excessive energy, I think you can negotiate very decent deal on power, and then also don't consider, in this case, this as the Achilles heel. I think it's a very useful way of spending excess energy. So I don't see it as dark as the title suggests. I see a lot of opportunity. So and as sustainable energy keeps on growing, there will be more wind, there will be more sun, it will be more erratic, it will be. We're all discussing what to do with the energy. Should we store it? Battery storage is not a very good idea on large scale yet. We tried with water energy, you can pump it up and reuse it again. A very good idea. But excess needs to be turned somehow in at least something fun instead of dumping it in the ground. So I think this is one of the best ways of using excess energy.
So actually, that's an uplifting message you're giving here, and it's too bad that Shorty isn't here, because Shorty at Windor, I think it was 2 years ago, he made a very deliberate effort to say, hey, we're going to go renewable energy, and they turned to a Spanish operator that only deals in renewable energy, and the consequence, I mean, it's slightly, at this point, slightly more expensive than normal energy. But then it was the ecological thing to do, and a little bit of image building. But as you said, I mean, this is happening, and then Spain is probably the country in terms of wind, in terms of sun, unbeatable in certain areas. Energy, green energy, is that a major issue for you?
For sure, but we look at green energy, and there's certainly a lot in Texas, but a lot of people will just switch you between anyway, automatically. There's, you asked what the big savings are. It's definitely manifest management, how you operate your business. It's definitely labor, and it's definitely how you use energy. So if you were to take half an hour of VFS flying non-stop, that could set your electricity rate for the entire year in terms of the capacity charges that you're charged. So therefore, if you can manage the way that you use every half hour, and the biggest users of your electricity are your instructors and your pro-flyers, so that's where you have to learn to manage it. And the other area, we talk about manifest management, is how you deal with that manifest every single day. We run things called skinny shifts, where you block off every half hour when you're not busy, because that way you can use half the labor. And it just means that you're using stuff very efficiently. You still need the people. I get worried when you say what you can get away with, because we never try to get away with anything, because that kind of gets into the point of compromising health and safety and things like that.
No, not like that. I'm talking like, let's imagine you've got a four-way team, and you can have the option so you can see a screen with warnings, and you have the option that you can be able to operate from the driver's booth. From the door where you operate. So in that, I'm saying you can get away with, you have everything in place necessary, so it's safe.
I'm sure it was a turn of phrase, but that's a really important part to us. So energy is a killer, and there are new technology solutions to this. So we're literally just trialing something that we think will bring us a minimum of 4%. And that's massive on our energy bill for 90 tunnels around the world, if we can put that in. And it could be as much as 10. And it's, again, something in the airflow. So
it's keeping at it.
Well, I have one more thing, actually, which is also, it depends very much on the country and on the principle of paying and charging for the electricity. Somewhere you are paying for maximum per 15 minutes, somewhere it's, another period of the time. But what makes the wind tunnel expensive on the consumption is not really the flying itself, but those rapid changes where sometimes really you can reach the for a few seconds some maximum, which is maybe over your agreed limit, which makes the operation and expensive. And this is something what can be solved by the software which is inside of the wind tunnel. I think most of the producers have it. That you can, of course, there is a compromise between the speed of the reaction of the wind tunnel, but the consumption, and there might be really optimized according to the grid condition and local operators allowed amount of the energy he can or he is willing to do. So we can even, compromise of starting the cooling system later or not at this time when you are flying that high speed, starting not in 2 seconds but in 3 seconds or 4 seconds, which doesn't make sense much for the flyers, but you can pretend those consumption peaks. So that's something which really, I think, could have the influence on the total efficiency.
Yes?
For me, another very important thing to do is be very careful when you are trying to cut costs within the company and the operations. Sometimes something may seem like a very good idea because you're saving money quite instantly. But you have to look at how these impacts other areas of your company as well. At times you may do something which may drop the motivation of staff or upset customers. And at the end of the day, you need those customers to stay coming back. There's no point dropping costs if you end up getting lower sales. There's no point lowering motivation if people are going to leave and you have to then pay more to replace. You might as well keep your customers happy, keep your staff happy, and then work out how to lower the costs while still maintaining that level. So I think that's also very, very important to be able to accomplish.
Excellent. No, that's obviously also a principle in every business in many ways. What's probably getting back to the initial plan that I had to really have this analysis of Swiss situation, wind tunnel consumption, really analyzed on the basis of that, maybe control energy, applied the system, and maybe over a period of 3 or 4 months, really trying to find out what would have been achievable, and that this didn't happen. It's unfortunate, but yeah, I still have with my friend an offer. If somebody has in a market that he can relate to, because he's, as I said, he's working in Switzerland, he would offer himself to analyze on the basis of a grid operator, he knows certain other markets, and make certain recommendations. And if you listen to the conversation, you're going to catch up on a few things you mentioned on like storage aspects, and overall it's very, very positive. What I noticed here in Europe, there are significant differences in prices between certain locations and other locations. I mean, right now, where would you say in Europe flying is the cheapest?
Poland is very, very cheap. Not in Europe, but you can also go to Russia. Very, very cheap. And I don't really think it's wise to say within Europe, because most pro flyers, they don't care whether it's in Europe or not. As long as they can go there cheaply, they're going to go there.
I kept my focus a little bit on Europe. It's definitely, I confirmed that Poland is by far the least expensive, and Russia, obviously. They're also working a little bit more creatively, and then longer hours and new formats with people going there, basically living in a wind tunnel and sleeping there, eating there, and flying there at 4 o'clock in the morning if needed. Are you considering something like that?
We consider most things when we can. We haven't quite got around to the Slovakian package where they even take you up in bed at night, I think, but we haven't quite got around to that. But there's definitely, there's a race to the bottom, and that's always the danger, is the race to the bottom. And whether it's the sale of technology or whether it's the sale of tunnel time, when there's a race to the bottom, there's a compromise. And when there's a compromise, it ends up not being a good place. So for us, we'd rather premium our product, although I don't think we're at premium prices. Some of our tunnels will be, some won't, depends on the market. But we just don't want to go chasing a very small part of that business for the sake of it. We know that the skydiver trade, the pro flyer trade, will go chase the price. We totally understand that. And sometimes we're not going to do that because they're going to want the same peak times that we can sell out well by bringing in new flyers and hopefully creating the new flyer market as well. There's other ways we think to bring premium in, and that might be through a different coaching program or bringing in external coaches and doing other things. So we rarely chase the bottom price.
And that usually is the good policy. In many ways, I was amazed now, this tunnel that opened up, one of your tunnels in Abu Dhabi. Apparently, and I've seen videos already, that there is a tourism, people going there just to fly that tunnel. And Abu Dhabi, I've been there a number of times. It's not the closest location, it's not the cheapest location, and they go there to fly in this huge tunnel.
I was talking to Domi last night. We reckon it probably is the cheapest flying on the planet. There's a 35, you're going to put a 35 way in there. So they'll put 35 people in there, and I think it's about 12 or 1500 bucks an hour, it's nothing. It's for a 32-foot tunnel, it's nothing. That's going to be the cheapest flying on the planet. So get 32 mates and off you go.
No, but like I think people, correct me if I'm wrong, people are doing that already.
Yeah, they
I
are.
saw videos of 30 people in that wind tunnel.
You give me one skydive route and profile who doesn't want to go and fly in Abu Dhabi.
Before we turn over to Vince now, my last question to you, Oscar. You're also one of these like Renaissance. You're touching a little bit of everything: Formula One, cars, and you see other ways of in design and retrofitted, God knows what, and an additional Venturi somewhere here or there, and that could make this affordable?
So I have analyzed quite some tunnels, and there used to be a lot of bad tunnels, very high consumption, and I do think that most people that are here today are now on a level where it's just sitting at the right point. There's no magical savings anymore when you do a proper usage of a loop or a double loop, or even I think you can build an open loop system with the same efficiency if you do it well. I don't think that there's much there. This is I think that the one thing that determines the usage is the diameter that you choose, and that's the sometimes the bigger is the better. If you consider that story. So I don't think there is another step to take in power usage.
Well, there is one step that can be taken rather easily, and I don't know how we ran it. You called me, I called you?
You called me.
I called you?
Yeah.
Okay. All of a sudden this, boom, I said, what is he doing? So we talked, and here is a gentleman who basically had an excellent job working for Decathlon in a think tank and being creative and probably getting pretty good pay. And he says, no, I just want to fly. And I've been there, and many, many years ago, you sacrifice your professional career. No, he said, I'm not sacrificing my professional career. I'm trying to build a new one. And his concept, very easily explained, is that of who knows what blah blah car is in this community. Okay, it's pretty much the blah blah car of wind tunnels, and you have better explained.
Yeah, I would say it's a blah blah car of tunnel time, because I'm not sharing the tunnel itself, I'm sharing the tunnel booking. So just to be back at when everything starts, when I start indoor skydiving, the price for this is the only sport in the world where we are talking the price for a minute. It's 12 euros a minute, so it's really expensive. I started flying, I fell in love with it, I started flying more. My wife came and told me, okay, this is a little bit expensive, so I just tried to told her, okay, I could have buy a motorcycle, so I continue flying. Then she came back and said, maybe now you can have 2 motorcycles. So I started thinking about it. And I was working in innovation and in social economy and collaborative economy. So the BlaBlaCar things just came together with the exams. I discovered that flying with other people in the wind tunnel is much more funny than flying alone, because when you're alone, you're flying for 2-3 minutes and then you don't know really what to do. So when you're together, it's really cool. But when you're starting to fly, you've been a first timer, you start to become a frequent flyer, basically you don't know anyone to fly with, and you have to find people to fly with. So this is where I decided what I need is to get a platform where I can find people to share my bookings with, and so I can save money. So I quit my job, I learned to code, and I developed it, and I try to run it now.
And I'm sure some of you have already met him, and you've approached now how many operators?
Not so much. I'm working mostly. I'm trying to go in Europe first. So I'm talking with some people in France, in Belgium, in Germany too, and it's going step by step because I'm alone on the project. So it takes time.
And you're taking 15 minutes this afternoon to really show it in great detail and in all color. And as he said, I mean, he did all his own coding, the website. I mean, you started your company on a one-man show. We have one thing in common there. And I really think, I mean, if the community accepts this, have you seen a wind diver concept described a little bit somewhere?
I have, yeah.
Yep. What's your initial reaction on it?
So one of the big things in operations for us is marketing, sales and marketing. So that's what it's all about. It's about filling the tunnels, filling the funnel, etc. So if that's another channel to marketing, bring it on. Fantastic.
Okay. This is CEO of iFly. Vince, go get it. All right. I think this was really productive, a lot more productive than it could have been. It's too bad that we don't have the window angle represented here, because that was basically the decision to go green. A little bit of social responsibility, a little bit of Greta effect. And it works. I mean, they got recognition for taking that step. Cost them a little bit more, but overall, I think it was the right decision. In any case, I mean, this is the one area that's where I'm in it over my head, because I'm a letters man. I mean, and barely kilowatts and kilo whatever. But now I'm amazed by the dynamics of the market, because it is really something, if you study this right, even as a consumer, small consumer, you can probably save money, really. And on that note, I would like to thank everybody on this panel. I think you have made a great contribution here. I'm definitely glad I had you jump in here, because you touch it all. You're the ultimate Renaissance man. And we'll see each other again. Thank you very much, and thank you. Yep. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Now, if we do it our
Hello, Roland. Hello. This is Jan Deniken from the Jochen Schweizer Arena. And I don't know what Jochen told you, but I think we do it also right with our energy consumption. We also have first-time flyers between 300 and 350 kilowatt per hour. So we love kids, we love belly flyers, and our consumption, yes, is like you said it, Simon, between 250,000 euros per year. So we got one recirculating wind tunnel, and we optimized it after bottom-up with a company, with a aerodynamic company who's working for automotive branch, and we made it a little bit better. So we are quite doing the same thing, and we also we got energy company who does with us atypische Netznutzung, called in Germany, atypic consumption. So we got this refund you talked about, up to 70,000 euros per year. But the 400,000 of Jochen is not right, because we got the arena with a surfing station, with a big gastronomy, with a wind tunnel, with 400 B2B events. So it's much more on the whole arena than 400,000, but the wind tunnel does round about 250,000 euros a year.
I'm sorry,
to make this correct.
Could have been my fault that I quoted, and it wasn't Jochen. It was I was talking very casually with Thomas Spielvogel, and the number 70,000 savings. I mean, that's what.
Well, I developed the wind tunnel, so I know how high the consumption is.
No, I really think this. Maybe there is one operator here that hasn't heard about this. It's worth looking into. It is, and thank you very much. All right, thanks, guys. Let's move on. Next is our session number. Session number 8. I would like to ask all the panelists to come up and
wired up.
We people, marvelous, playful creatures. To rule the river, we caught it in a box. To outrun time, we broke the ribbon of the main road. To overcome gravity, we rose above the clouds. And this time, we captured the sky and bring one piece to the ground, to hold the wind, to master gravity, to free your dreams. We are the life, we are the time, the passion, and the revolution. We are mad.
you doing? Yeah, long time no see. Oh, not so long. When was it? In Lille. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yesterday, we could quite some running. This first session, maybe not so much. I think if you can look at them all, probably the two first ones very interesting. Yeah. From yesterday. Yes. And the third one. Okay.
But they're generic. They're not for him.
Yeah, session 1, 2, 3 is probably the one that found interesting. Things are good? What? Busy? Always? Yeah. There's 55,000 people here. Yeah. And we had this field year last year because it was all about yellow there and social strikes, industrial strikes. But France on riots as usual. But we're hoping for a better year this year. Yeah. I went down. The first one's the one in the big shopping centre. Yeah. Yeah, I went down there last week. Oh, when we were in well, beautiful. That's the one on Irish Coast. Okay, yeah, right. Maybe we asked if you were there. Yeah, next time we're in town. Okay. That's all right, man. Great to see you. A lot of places aren't renting. Well, he's got but he's up on yes, still I'm through. Look at the window, he's up on. How do I come to that? Okay. What? What I did wrong there. Yeah, but the business, but if you want to talk for the whole business, you get an assignment out there. You take this and this. So, and then we can switch with this person. We are on exit. So it's fine. Mobile. This one is very soft. It doesn't have any switches, right? No. I've got to do it again. The whole thing. It says the seats are gone. Graphic artists and stuff. I'm sure I could go find something new right away. Yes. So now click on. Yeah. Well, 6 o'clock in the morning. Might not be get an invoice for that. Yeah. 22. Yeah.
Smart move. So that's Simon. And send it. So how much is it? Still there? How time in total? So yeah, so we're staying overnight, 18 hours to flight. We can't fly direct anyway, so we have to, but on the way home, we're not staying in Los Angeles. Flight to LA, then we've got 4 hour additional flight to Switzerland, and then
Morning, sir. Coffee and croissant. Oh, you got coffee? Yeah, all right. All right, come in 2 seconds. We'll chat.
But later.
Yeah, see you.
Let's sit down and we can get started. We might have to have you up here.
No.
Okay, we'll sit, get rolling, then we'll get started. Get these movements started. have them on. Okay, good. Thank you, friends, for returning. We'll just wait for a couple more people to get back. Let's take our seats. I know it can be difficult to pull yourself away from the networking opportunities, but there will be more during the course of the day.
Yeah, my shoulder.
I'm gonna get
It's bright down here. The sunglasses on next.
350.
How did you sit here for 2 days, 2 solid straight?
Their first time. I was just
Still
talking to
missing
him.
one.
I fly tunnels. This whole thing, yeah.
Well, I
think they are.
They sell that as a
6, 1, 2, 3,
complete
4.
unit.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
Oh, Jerome, yes, that's true.
No, I think they're their own technology. I'm not
And
sure.
Patrice is taking a break now? He should. He's been on every. He's been on every
Too
panel.
much, have I?
Yeah, I think so.
French guys. I have no idea
Yeah, I know.
why I'm on this.
You
I
know
think
what?
we've heard lots of Patrice.
Is this one?
Here's our man.
Yeah, I've seen him before. Yeah.
Morning.
Morning, ça va?
Bonjour, monsieur.
Thank you, everybody.
You know what you're talking about?
Sorry?
We're now ready
You know what you're
to
talking about?
No.
launch into the session entitled Synergy
worse
Plus.
than you.
I'm
You
going
are
to
the best for that.
turn things over to
What you
Roland
did
to
yesterday was
introduce
very interesting.
our panel for this discussion, which is a very important one, an interesting one, and I'm sure everyone will have some ideas about it, and I hope you're happy to share them with the rest of us. So Roland, over to you.
Thank you very much, Jay. And what I will do is I will pass it right on to our panelists. Rob, can you very briefly tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yes, if I was to describe myself, I'm a master examiner in skydiving and a program developer. I'm one of the initial developers from the AFF program back in '79 when Kenny Coleman was doing it. So I'm one of the longest lasting examiners that are still working from that era. In 1994, Skydiving University, my company, put together a program called ISP, Integrated Student Program. A lot of people think that's a USB program, but it's actually a Skydiving University program. And it was our first attempt to use a wind tunnel in training. We used West Tennessee Forge. We quickly realized that the technology at that time was not sufficient. The big suits and the conditions in the wind tunnel just was not close enough to actual free fall, so we abandoned it. 1997, I had an opportunity to work in Fort Bragg Tunnel as a subcontractor for a four-way team with Luxembourg. They got a military award from the government to actually use 20 hours. So it was my first exposure using a real wind tunnel with real speed. And they gave us 5 hours on the first day, which is mind-blowing when you don't know how to fly in a wind tunnel. And I learned a lot. The Golden Knights come in with us, and I really learned a lot about what you can do with a wind tunnel. Fast forward, 1998, meet a gentleman in Paris Valley, Bill Kitchen. Of course, people that know SkyVenture history understand that Bill Kitchen is the founder and the creator of SkyVenture. He asked me a question, if I build it, can we use it as a free fall trainer? My answer was, if you can build it so that we can use our regular suits, maybe even put lead on, and airflow is reasonably clean, I said, absolutely, it would work. We made an agreement before the wind tunnel was built that Skydiving University would run and create a wind tunnel AFF program so that we'd use it as basic training tool. I went to USVA, I pitched a program, which they accepted on a waiver. They accepted or had the waiver issued to me before SkyVenture was finished construction. And as fast as that wind tunnel opened in 1999, Skydiving University started running their first students out of the wind tunnel using 20 minutes of wind tunnel time and a 4-jump program, but followed by 3 coach jumps mandatory. And so my involvement right here today is to really talk about the, I guess, synergies, what this is, but the relationship between the drop zones and the wind tunnel, and the things we've learned over the years of how that can be to our advantage, and also what we need to do to make it work, because it is a special circumstance. That's all.
Rob has a video.
The introduction.
No, let's introduce. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Rob, and it was a pleasure that you really decided on the spot to come over here and make this panel here. Great. Now, when I had this parachute center many years ago, it was my dream and to have a wind tunnel here. We even went to the States. We looked at the options available there. We had to discard it because we didn't have the money, quite simply. But it wasn't really state of the art at the time. We were talking 1987. Now, a few years later, quite a few years later, the people who are running the parachute center now, they have what I consider the optimum setup for teaching skydiving in all its forms, shapes, and I would like you, Julie, the managing director, and the sporting director, Richie, tell us a little bit about your programs, Skydive Emporia Brava, and tunnel synergies.
You want me to start? Yeah. Okay. From our point of view, obviously, it's a great synergy. It helped us a lot. It generates much more value in the location itself. At the beginning, when you have a new company coming and building a new tunnel, drop zone might think, oh wow, we might lose slots in the planes. But in the long term, if properly driven, it just generates an excellent synergy in the sense that the value of the location, so you can have the people, it's a bit what Simon Ward was saying yesterday, you have to, its own industry has got its own market, but they got several connections that you transfer, so one captures the new customers, and in some point it transfers to each other. So all this, it generates a more interesting location, more people coming, and you get a bigger market at the end. On the point of view of the technical part, obviously it's a great training tool for such from teams and for FFs, obviously. The FFs, but Richie will explain you much deeper. But all this, at the end, technically, obviously, that gives you a new horizon of possibilities to offer to the people. So looking from the point of view of the drop zone has been a big change, a step ahead. And Richie will explain you more about the synergy, what we use technically for teaching students, for example, teaching advanced skydivers for advanced training.
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Julie on that. It's our tunnel that we have next door to us, and using the tunnel to assist, mainly speaking about the AFF program and beginner skydivers, is just extraordinary. We've been using it now for 3 full seasons, which represents around 250 full course students a year, going through to at least finishing their AFF, if not getting to A license level. And we've been using that with enormous success. In the beginning, the first year, we were using parallel the old AFF program in addition with what we call AFF Plus, which is let's call it Tunnel AFF. It was amazing, and we were selling them both. And in the end, today we don't do the other one at all, unless there is no tunnel available, and then by legality we have to do the original, or let's say traditional AFF. But I mean, just for example, I think we would probably have reduced our repetition levels during the course of AFF by up to 80%. We probably repeat some tunnel because we use that as let's say a little stop point to test the people, obviously. So that's the first point, that you're testing the person apart from the ground school itself. And we have to repeat tunnel a few times to get somebody to the ability, and even people take that point to step out because they say it's not for them, which is great because we don't want anybody in the air that shouldn't be there. We have a tandem in our course as well, but the tunnel has produced this security within the AFF that's on another level. Not to mention what a finished AFF student is today. I think it's better than what it was before, and that's for sure. And these people then, any spare time they have or money, they're going to the tunnel to improve their skills and have this base that's extraordinary for that basic safety, you know, even if it's just for stability during deployment, which is, in the end, a big one.
David, does the FFP have an official position on endorsing tunnel to substitute, let's say, AFF levels, or is there any specific program that combines the two elements, wind tunnel and accelerated freefall training?
You know, it was not really easy at the beginning. I think it was the same in many countries. When we had indoor coming, there were political choice to do. For most of national aero clubs, they have to wonder, do we get them with us, or do we split from them? And the decision from the French Federation, of course, was to get indoor being part of the federation. And you know the system in France, we are working, the federations are working for the French government. They have a delegation of power. And of course, the goal was to get indoor with us because it was also a gate for Olympics. And in France, there is two kind of categories. There is two categories of sports: the Olympic ones that get big foundations from the state, and the others that get less. So, of course, for the French Federation, indoor would have to be part of the sport. But on the other hand, federation like ours was an association from territories, and indoor industry is not association, it's private, it's corporations. So it's not the same people that are elected the bureau. So how can explain to people that are from the skydiving, from the outdoor skydiving, that part of the money will be spent into indoor, that is not their skydiving. So this was a problem. And of course, we have seen at the beginning a small and then a big part of the money that was spent to airplane, to outdoor, that was then spent indoor. And you know, the money is not, the amount is defined, you know, when you spend here, you cannot anymore spend it. If you have bad weather on one day and then you go make your money in the indoor, this won't be a slot anymore. So for us, in terms of development, we are wondering now how we could do in the future to have more development from the indoor to the outdoor, having more and more people skydiving, subscribing, and jumping. We need more time because a good question would be, for instance, to check what about this young French team that was world champion in junior information skydiving 2 or 3 years ago? Will they be one day world champion from outdoor in a plane or not? Will we have a transfer between in and outdoor? This is kinds of things we are wondering in terms of synergy. Of course, the synergy about interest for skills, I think it's in evidence. We are going to use the indoor flight to try to organize AFF for disabled people.
You will be talking about this afternoon?
Yes, but this program is a little different than the one I will talk about this afternoon. What I'm talking about here is just a small aspect. It's how can we make disabled people being able to have skills for free fall, so that he could be maybe one day jump alone. And it's not easy, but with the wind tunnel, we hope to be able to have him learning how to go back and face to the ground, and to train on opening mechanism. And this could be a part of the program. Of course, we need also to solve the canopy problems. If you cut away, it's not the same canopy because we are working on hybrid canopies. So this is just an example of what kind of skills aspects can bring indoor to outdoor.
Maybe I made a little bit of a mistake in the way I worded it. We want to keep the focus on this really synergetic relationship in the areas of training students, maybe to the extent beyond, but emphasis very specifically, I would say, to start out, AFF. Have you ever in your time as an operator in the UK, worked with the BPA on creating a system that would combine indoor and outdoor?
Of course. First of all, I would like to say, Rob Laidlaw, we are not worthy. We are in the presence of greatness. And for those who don't know, Rob Laidlaw and tunnelcamp.com are the two things that kick-started ProFlyers in this wind tunnel industry. Without you guys, there probably wouldn't have been a wind tunnel industry. Let's hear it.
Well, thank you very much.
Now, Rob, what have you been doing that there are still so many drop zones out there who still think that the wind tunnel industry is a pariah?
Right.
So why are there so many drop zones who still think we're going to eat their lunch?
Right.
When in fact, the synergy between indoor skydiving and outdoor skydiving is immense, and it's fantastic. Hearing the word politics really worries me. We shouldn't have any politics. It's great to see the APF are here, come here all the way from Australia just to learn. We did programs with the BPA. I've never managed them to get them to do what the Canadian Sport Association have done, which was to make it part of AFF for a certain while. I don't know if that's still the case, but those are the sorts of things that we have to do. And without indoor skydiving at the moment, skydiving would be at that trajectory and skill level. And I don't think we're feeding a lot of new customers, but we're feeding the skill level. And you just look at the whole difference in skydiving. And I'd also like to ask the question, what are we getting back from skydiving? What's skydiving putting into the wind tunnel industry, apart from ProFlyer hours, of which they do a lot, but that's natural because we are that simulator. So there's lots of synergies.
Okay, the debate is open, and I think you're the man right now to have this all sorted out.
So while I expand on this, I would like to open up the first clip, which is the wind tunnel clip.
Can we do clip number one?
It's number one. This is what this is. This is about 4.5 minutes of actual working with non-skydivers. So customers off the street that are just learning to fly for the first time, to prepare them for their first skydives. I'm not going to comment much about the program, what's happening behind me right now. I'm just going to let you see the samples of the drills. This is not all the drills we do in 20 minutes, but it's just showing you where we're going with the students to prep them for the first jump, which is not AFF. What we're focusing on is body flight. The better we can get them to fly in 20 minutes, the better they're going to do in an AFF jump. So we're not focusing on dive flow, altimeter checks, and what I see a lot of AFF instructors do when they bring students to the tunnel. We look at that as a waste of opportunity. So this is body flight training. And I got several different examples of several students here going through the 20-minute program. Now, last In February, I spoke in Dallas on a topic that was this. It was benefits of the wind tunnel for your drop zone in AFF was the topic. And at the end of the presentation, we asked one simple question. And this is all we had to ask was one question. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use the wind tunnel for your operation? Why wouldn't you use the wind tunnel to accelerate your students? It's a fantastic program. It is the best in the world, by far. The questions that we got back, well, first, as Jerome spoke, well, it's taking money away from the drop zone. Fair enough. However, we work on drop zones and have problems with weather. Those students come out weekend after weekend, and what's happening is they're losing interest. So how many students do you have that actually stopped coming out because of weather? They just lost interest because they could never get that first jump. But if you had an option that you could take them back to the wind tunnel and keep them current, or what if you didn't have a 7-jump program and you only had a 4-jump program, which is what we have, 1 2-in-1 jump followed by 3 1-in-1 jumps. We don't really need the 2-in-1 jump, but we use that for psychology, not to let them go unstable and exit. I mean, they're still skydiving at 2 miles above the ground, so you have to realize everybody responds to that when you leave an airplane. I don't care how much wind tunnel time you've got. So I can literally take a student for a first jump course in the morning, go to the wind tunnel in the afternoon, show up the next morning into land, and I can finish the AFF program in 1 day. In 1 day. What that does psychologically to the student is they hold themselves different the next morning. They're not a student anymore. They've graduated. They're on to coaching. That creates retention. And that's the key thing here is what we're trying to do is build the sport and build the core. The wind tunnel is an excellent thing to help us build that retention. I know we can be stuck in the past about what this is taking money away from the drop zone, but if you lose a customer, you lost the money anyway. If you keep the customer, well, then they continue with coaching. And I strongly encourage everybody does about a 9 or 10 jump coaching program beyond AFF. If you're not thinking that way, you need to start thinking that way. If you really want to make good skydivers, safe skydivers, and retain skydivers. The other thing is, now you keep them for the license. They get a license, they'll buy equipment from you. So if you happen to be equipment selling business in your drop zone, now you've made another sale. Now you add that up and tell me as an operator, did you really lose much money on those couple of 2-in-1 jumps that you sacrificed? Or actually, did you keep a customer, build your core, and you have more money overall, which now bigger core, you don't have a turbine airplane, now you can have a turbine airplane. Maybe you have a turbine airplane, maybe you get 2 turbine airplanes. This is how you build drop zones. This is when I consult drop zones, this is what I tell them how to do it. Other questions, staff. Well, you're taking money away from me. I said, okay, fair enough. Once again, that student quit because of the bad weather. Or, why don't you get involved in the wind tunnel? Because on a rainy day, I take people to the wind tunnel and I actually make pretty good money. So I'm not sitting at home whining because I'm not making any money. I have an actual option where I can go make money anytime I want. So therefore, my work is steady all the time and is not weather dependent. That opened up a lot of eyes where people sort of step back going, that's not a bad answer. So maybe going out and investing in your own flying skills is necessary. I was going to try to freeze right at the end of that last clip, but the thing I wanted to, at the end of that last clip, I wanted to show, if some of you noticed, where it stopped, is relationship between the wind tunnel and staff. The wind tunnel is concerned about skydivers coming in there. So this is another thing. Some people are saying, well, we went to certain wind tunnels and we weren't warmly received. Well, you need to be able to handle yourself in the wind tunnel properly for them to trust you. So we have to have a relationship with the staff at the wind tunnel. This is another factor. So if you want to use the wind tunnel, you also have to realize we have to behave in a way that we have our synergy and cooperation. So when I come in here and I'm working with the students, or any of my staff, the wind tunnel instructors are comfortable not to interfere with us. But we earn that right. So we have to make sure that we have our flying skills down. So in that relationship. What it showed at the end of this clip, right at the very end, is the relationship on this with this staff is excellent. Because I'm standing against the glass, and I don't know if you noticed, they're cleaning up at the end of the night on the window. And as I was standing there, they drew angel wings behind me and put a halo over my head. So I don't know if you noticed the last clip on that when it froze. That was a picture. That's a sign of an excellent relationship, working well with the wind tunnel staff and high trust. That's what we have to develop. So these are the questions from the drop zones. And then the questions in the tunnel are, will we see people come in and they don't handle themselves well, they don't handle the students well, the students are, it's dangerous. I've been in the wind tunnel control room looking at the operator, looking back and forth saying, I think we need to shut this down. We need to turn airflow off because it's getting crazy. So we have to realize as skydivers, if we want to work in the wind tunnel, then we also have to be able to have our own skills in the wind tunnel, like what you're seeing me here. I can squat, I can stand, I can walk, I can flip on my belly, I can stand back up, I can go over to the student, I can give them signals. And so it takes a certain person to do this. Now, drop zones. Sending people to the wind tunnel. This is now Simon and I, we look at each other right here. The wind tunnel staff in most places they're trained are not good trainers for AFF. Their techniques for the tourists, it's a different body position for lower airspeed so they don't fly through the door. We get that, we totally understand what they're doing. However, for us, what we need a balanced body position, mid-range, so they can actually learn to fly. So we have a little battle sometimes between technique of getting this happening. So Skydive DeLand, as an example, used the wind tunnel staff one time for a Qatar contract and said they would never do that again. They said that the benefit of what the students got out of the tunnel experience wasn't good enough. So we don't like to use solely wind tunnel staff to train our AFF students. On the other half, I see people that AFF instructors that don't fly in the wind tunnel, they come into the wind tunnel and they try to run with their students, but they don't have a clue what the tool is and what the potential is of the wind tunnel. So they're just doing ridiculous exercises. Like I say, it's just a waste of an opportunity and time and a waste of money. Making them do a million training pulls, look at their altimeter, do a dive flow, sit in an arch, rather than push the skills as you see right here. Maybe if we could go to clip 2.
Can we put the second clip on?
So this will show you a sample of, not all the 4 jumps, but just a little sampling of what's happening in free fall in 4 jumps. Our first jump is a release jump and 90-degree turns. So we are skipping levels 1, 2, and 3 in regular AFF. We're going straight to 4, but we're doing what's done on 1, 2, and 3, but we're achieving what needs to be done on 1, 2, and 3, because 1, 2, and 3 in AFF should focus and achieve one thing only, relaxation. And however you do that, is you're doing the right thing. If you're doing anything that's opposing relaxation, you're doing the wrong thing. So the wind tunnel can actually substitute that 1, 2, and 3. 20 minutes of wind tunnel time, that's what we're focusing on. Body skills, flying skills, but relaxing, getting them to fly to the door, getting them to smile, getting them to have a good time. So when the instructors come in and try to work with the students from the wind tunnel point of view and can't fly, or from my point of view, that is not appropriate either. So what we talked about in Dallas, and this was from Nicholas Gummison, from Brad Cole, you remember Brad Cole was speaking with me as well, that it's a special instructor that we have to develop. And so we train our staff in the tunnel, show them the drills, show them our routine, so that we get the end product we want. Another thing that wind tunnel staff will do that we particularly do not like is they want to impress the students. They want to impress the clients, which, if as a tourist, that's great. But they're not taking them up in the sky the next day. When we're taking them up in the sky the next day, I need high repetition, very simple things worked on. I don't care about a mantis position. I don't need them to backfly or zip fly. I need fundamentals, and I need 20 minutes of high drilling and high reps to make that happen. And when it's done properly, Then we get the student that we can take out the door, we can release that student, they're going to do their 90-degree turns. We've had as many as 11 90-degree turns on the first jump, and as many as 8 or 9 360s on the following jump. So the performances they're getting are pretty awesome, and therefore this is what I see is the true advantage. Flying skills-wise and confidence. Well, you see this person is on his 5th skydive right here, learning body flight. And if you're looking to make his approaches, nice, straight, clean, so that's the mandatory coaching that comes behind. And I just wanted to show a sample of that as what's next.
That's AFF, 7 levels, plus
it's 4 levels, plus 3 mandatory coach jumps, but we actually really urge that you do 9 coach jumps. But we will not put anybody on solo until they've done 7 jumps. And that's just canopy control training. So, advantages to the student. Free fall is not a mystery. Stress in free fall is reduced. Because stress is reduced, if they have unusual situations and they have an emergency situation, they're better able to execute those emergency situations. People make mistakes on those type of things when they go over the red line on stress and then do not follow the proper training. If you can keep that stress management within a particular level, they're going to perform better. And the reason everybody says they didn't train canopy control for 30 years, which, sorry, I just call that an excuse, is information overload. But the fact is, I didn't agree with it then. With the wind tunnel now, there's absolutely no justification to use the words information overload, because the skills that have been taught in the wind tunnel are beyond what's happening in the first jumps, except that we can't teach a back loop and a front loop. We do the rolls in the tunnel, half rolls, and sometimes the instructors will say, let them do the full roll. But we let the instructor make that decision, not me. I'll just go with the half roll to stay within the management's rules. So stress is reduced, performance is increased, and therefore opportunity for canopy control training is awesome. So in our program, we have a 25-jump program, 25 different flight planners, and 25 canopy exercises done to the A license, which in USPA terms, they have their B license proficiency card for canopy control. We teach all of that by 25 jumps. So by the time we're finished with somebody with an A license right now, I absolutely can say this with confidence. We have a better able and safer trained skydiver than any other school that I know of right now. And that in big part is because we're starting with the wind tunnel that allows those opportunities. I think I've said my piece.
You certainly did. And what you transmit is exactly what has always distinguished you. You're a passionate man, and I think in this business you have to be passionate. If you do things half-assed, it's usually not going to work. You have thought this through, and let's face it, in the past, tunnel and AFF combinations were used mostly by the military. You had all these crack units that couldn't afford to waste time with weeks on a drop zone and doing it the normal way. They had to go in and out of a country and learn to skydive in 4 days, if possible. And it was done. I've seen it myself. And what we're doing right now is we're working on the civilian side of such programs, and I think this could actually change a lot of things in terms of your appeal to the customer and in terms of the whole training. Your experiences now, obviously, you alluded to it, there is always this little bit of friction. It's money out of my pocket here. I mean, these guys are going to go over there, they're going to spend money, and the situation in Apuria Brava is not the typical one. I mean, there are probably a handful of drop zones in the world that have right adjacent to them a wind tunnel. In most cases, this wind tunnel is owned by the drop zone. Take the Larry Hills, the Paris has it, and I think Rayford has it. Here, it's two completely independent, different companies. And you had to kind of, do certain things to make this exchange and interchange possible. How did that go?
Yeah. just before coming here, I was thinking about this, how to analyze this. If you analyze it in a point of view of a drop zone itself, you do the SWOT diagram, strength, weakness, opportunities and threats, you have it comes out with one picture. If you do that in the location with a wind tunnel, altogether, even if it's not the same company, it changes it completely. So you have much more opportunities, you have much more weakness, and you have a bigger, you open to a bigger attraction for people to come. So I was thinking about this and said, look, that's a good point to see it. So imagine a drop zone, you have the problem with the weather, you have the problem with the sunset. The problem is that you get a jump after the sunset or before. Having the wind tunnel so people can, for example, teams, that's the standard issue, or sport skydivers. They come here to improve their skills so they can jump, they plan the trip with only one travel to jump from planes, and at night go, or after sunset, go and fly in the wind tunnel. But on top you have the cross-selling opportunity. So they come here only for jumping, let's imagine, and the weather turns bad and they cannot jump the whole day. So they can always have the opportunity to go there. So all this, it fills the gap, one fills the gap of the other. So in fact, sometimes in some point, we give something to the wind tunnel, and for, what I think it's good, the synergy, it's great for this. I mean, and also for tandems or for first-timers, at the end, tandems got a lot of selling barriers. So price is one of them because it's quite expensive, and all the selling barriers that somebody that doesn't know anything about skydiving will turn to a place that doesn't know the instructor, and this person will hook him up and throw the guy out of the plane. So that's a big selling barriers. So as an approach, somebody like a group of people wants to experiment freefall, the ones they want, they can go for tandem skydive, and many others go for wind tunnel. In fact, we sell a lot of wind tunnel first timers experience on behalf of Window. So all this is it's at the end for us is a win-win.
Richie, from the practical side, I mean, you're the one. He's the marketer. You're the one working the relationship.
Yeah. Well, I'd just like to. I mean, Rob said it all. Really. I mean, I'd have to agree 100% with all of that. You know, we need to, as an instructor, not try and repeat what we're going to try and do in the sky in the tunnel. We need to get a student to perform the skills that we're going to need to see from him in the next 25 jumps, and only that. And then, as a tunnel instructor, the relation we have as an AFF instructor in the tunnel, we need to have the basic skills to do exactly what Rob was saying, to stand, walk, fly, and assist the student in those levels, and with the trust of the doormen or the staff from the tunnel, not from window. But for us, it's excellent. We're lucky. We've probably got in the AFF instructor team 4 or 5 of those guys that are wind tunnel instructors as well. But we've also had to win the trust from the tunnel, and it's great. Also, what you said, Rob, about tunnel instructors in general, teaching them AFF, if you just give a student to them, it's not very beneficial in general, let's say. We try and encourage the students, if they do we say in the training, if you do happen to go to the tunnel and do some more time for yourself, tell the people that you're doing the course at least, but we recommend at least try and take one of us so that we can actually get the maximum benefit from that simulator or training aid that we've got called the wind tunnel. So, yeah.
Other than AFF, AFF being the far most important program, it's the entry way into the sport. Could you see other programs that could play off this synergetic relationship?
For sure, and one of the interesting things that we were talking about in how the drop zones occasionally see it quite short-sightedly that they might be losing money. I remember in a previous life I consulted a couple of drop zones, and I would go back to a basic principle, which is a customer lifetime revenue. And if you look at the lifetime revenue for a customer, are you going to extend that even though it may take longer? And I think with what Rob's doing, that shows that you do. And we were looking at the time and the drop-off points of students in particular. I'm sure I'm if I asked here if anybody had given up jumping, gone to a wind tunnel and started jumping again, I'd get at least one hand going up, wouldn't I, Karina? And that's another thing that we're doing with the tunnels. We're bringing out a lot of the old skydivers again who are getting re-energized, and they're learning new skills, new tricks, and getting passion back for the sport. And whilst the rest of us were all summiting here last night and really learning about the business, Karina sloped off and did another jump because it was nice weather. And
she's hooked again.
She's hooked again, and that's because of tunnels. So that synergy is absolutely there all the way through. And for us to try to build those programs, that talks about doing partnerships with the drop zones and with the associations. So the fact that the FFP and the wind tunnels in France have a good relationship is really, really important. Just make sure it's symbiotic. And so all good relationships have to be symbiotic. They can't be controlling. And occasionally elements of that will come in between different organizations. And USPA and BPA in particular both decided that they're not in the business of governing or running the wind tunnel business, but they do work in a symbiotic way with them. But probably not as close as FFP, by the way.
In areas of training.
Yeah.
They're not going to sanction any national teams, but in areas of training.
Fantastic that the APF have flown all the way over here just for this, to hear this sort of thing, because there's massive opportunity.
One more thing, I mean, the Karina, she's not by herself. We also have Mary Lou. I think Mary Lou is a skydiver we both met in 1987 for Hills. He took her to a rock and roll concert. Was it Rolling Stones?
Rolling Stones, what stage in G-Hill should stay in G-Hill.
I think thousands of sleepers out there that would consider coming back, safely. If a program, I think there should be a very specific program. That's what you'd have to do to get back on. And do you have people working on that?
We don't have anybody specifically working on finding old skydivers who, not too crippled to get back in the air. But a lot of our marketing is channel marketing. So we will go into all the different channels, and we definitely go into the skydiver market, and that's both current and old skydivers. So
really think that's something that also could be put in place almost overnight. Doesn't take any major investments, and the gratification is tremendous. I mean, look at Karina and look at Mary Lou.
Genuinely believe that if you look at the repeat rates in indoor skydiving, depends where you are, but it's generally in the sort of 10 to 15%.
Higher than in skydiving.
Pardon?
Higher than in
highest skydiving is well below 1%, I think. I'm not sure what it is at the moment. You look at any one tunnel, any one of the UK tunnels does more first-timers than the entire tandem operation of the UK in a year. There's things like that. So I do think there's a huge opportunity of building retention. And one of the ways of building retention, the informational sensory overload that Rob dismisses but acknowledges at the same time, it does exist. And if you've got people going to do a tandem, and there's a tandem program, and you can get that person to come and do just even 2 flights in the tunnel first, they now know they can breathe in free fall. That question, can I breathe in free fall? But they can also bring their families. When their families come, they can watch, and then they can watch the skydive with much more knowledge because they've actually been in free fall inside the tunnel. And I'm sure you're seeing this. You just said that you're taking spectators over and first-timers over to the tunnel first. And I suspect that would have some benefit to retention. You'll probably tell me it doesn't, but I don't know if it does.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And we bought into a drop zone in the UK. It was a complete nightmare, but the drop zone's a pretty tough business. But we did buy into one, and I never got those synergies to work properly. And I think it's partly because the wind tunnel industry, because the mere nature of it, you put out 10 million euros whatever, you're running this thing like a pretty serious business. It's not like a couple of guys with a mate and a Cessna, which is how a lot of drop zones start before they become as sophisticated as Windor, and sometimes you are dealing with the small drop zones.
Exactly. Now, Rob, probably I think it should be you to wrap all of this up. I think here at in the last few statements, there is potential to further programs, to establishing an even tighter relationship. Give us your assessment of that.
Well, we've been using it in all sorts of different aspects ever since it was built. I mean, I'm talking about just getting customers off the street and how to get them into the air in your drop zone and utilize the wind tunnel. But we're also using it for basic body flight, advanced body flight. Of course, I'm an ex-FS coach for an 8-way, and I'm a world team captain for the large formations. I've used the wind tunnels for big way training. As much as you can't swoop in it, I can teach you just how to crunch your knees and do certain skills. AFF instructor training, we're using it a lot. I know their staff gets really excited when some of this stuff is going on because it gets a little crazy, but we still seem to work pretty well together with it, and they learn rollovers and spin stops. So, and plus then there's this disabled aspect of either working with this disabled or elderly, that I can screen people and I can look at their true potential. Is it possible for them to jump, or we gave it a try, we give it our best shot, and then just have to say, sorry, it's not for you, but we let them try, and at least. So there's safety. Safety. So those are the opportunities that we've seen and utilized.
I think this is all very promising. I think here we have the pioneers in development of programs, and then probably in implementing it across corporate lines. It's important that you find a partner you can trust, whether it be in your case a drop zone, or in the case of a drop zone, a wind tunnel, and to work towards a common goal. And if we really can agree on that, the common goal should be to take this brand, skydiving, body flying, whatever we want to call it, but like what we do as a brand, and try to make it more popular. And the more entry points you have, the more cohesion you have between the two platforms, the better. So thank you very much for having contributed to this very important panel discussion. We're going to have the number 9 coming up right afterwards. I think you're going to be on again. It's going to be, in Germany they call this the Elefantenrunde. That's when all the heavyweights get on, and where we will talk about the future. All right, thank you very much.
Please, people stay put so we can keep things going rather than taking a break, or if you have to run out, please come back so we don't have to get everybody back in, and we can get geared up for the next one, which will require people putting their mics on. But
thanks a lot, Rob.
Let's try to stay together. Okay.
It's a pleasure.
The goal of the accelerated freefall course is to create, by the end of it, a safe solo skydiver who can deal with problems as they occur, but is also relaxed enough to enjoy their skydiving in a very safe manner.
It's also new to me. Like, what we're doing is kind of, like baby steps. It's an evolution. So I'm excited to see how it goes at the end. But at the moment, as you've seen, it's quite entertaining, yeah.
AFF and AFF Plus are a complete package from start to finish. You will build up a relationship with your instructor for sure. We explain all the normal procedure during a skydive. We also then explain emergency procedure and possible problems that the student could encounter not just during AFF, but as their career in the sport. We practice both in the aircraft mock-up, so we run through the phase for the exit from the plane using a simulator, and also on creepers on the ground, on the little trolleys you see formation teams using for training. And then we go into the wind tunnel and we use that and teach them how to fly their body in the relative wind. The wind tunnel is very, very good for correcting problems when if a student reaches a certain stage in AFF and they have an unsymmetrical body position maybe, or their legs, one is stronger than the other, we can correct this by doing a little more tunnel flying. This is a revelation in skydive learning, and we are going to have a generation of children who can already skydive. They just need to learn to fly their canopies and to exit the airplane really nicely.
I had the AFF course twice. The first one was 15 years ago, and I did 25 jumps, I remember. I do have a lot of memory. I remember that the first jump, or the second jump, or the third jump, I could feel my heart beating, you know? It was like a lot of silence around myself and really intense. I truly think that the wind tunnel should be in all the drop zones. The tunnel gave me, you know, that extra thing.
But the sky is not like the wind tunnel in a way, because we can't turn the sky down, we can't reduce the power of the sky. But during the AFF, a student learns to fly their body in the relative wind at very high speed.
First jump I didn't like the most is I looked down straight away, and that is just human instinct, but I'm sure everybody would do it. Everyone would lie if they said they didn't do it. So when you're looking down, your body position is just totally out. But come the second jump, and when you finally get that sensation and don't worry about the ground, then you're totally fine. The wind tunnel's perfect for body positioning. It's definitely a lot harder if you were to just go straight to the plane and try and get a position straight away, because there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of other emotions going on when you're in the plane. So when you are having to do it with the tunnel, you're on the ground, it's there, it's simulating the exact same thing. What you do in the tunnel is all about body positioning, and it's very difficult. So when you get in the air and you realize how hard it is to just make little movements, having the tunnel is amazing. And that's what makes this school so amazing, that you have the tunnel right next door. It's world class. When you watch the video, it's very hard to see if you're smiling or not, because you're thinking about a lot of things. But when you get back in and you actually watch the video and you see, yourself in that position, yeah, it's such an amazing feeling. I've tried to keep calm as much as I can and just enjoy the week, because I'm by myself and I'm just sort of learning and learning and learning. It's one of the best things I've done in a long time.
1, 2.
Can we go back in? Can we go back in? Can we go back in? Oh, I've seen him this morning. Yeah. Boris? I saw him. I saw him this morning. Oh, is he talking outside? And then we should start. Okay. I'll get him. Boris! Boris Nebel. Nope. Wenn du kannst. Also wir fangen jetzt an, aber kann sich dazu. Ja, ja. How many people do we have on the panel?
I think it's 8.
Oh, sorry, Korean, sorry.
Schick mir dazu, das ist wirklich gute Bilder, wer hätte das gemacht?
Kameramann, TV.
Gut, Alter. Hier.
Okay. So we're missing?
We're missing Boris. Somebody is calling Boris, and we'll start. No, don't worry. Ladies and gentlemen, we should get going, please.
Okay, friends, thank you. We're ready to get started on this big session. Do we have one more? Yeah, I think you're going to have to.
We have 2 chairs left. One's for.
Yeah, okay, so Andre, unfortunately, you're young. Andre's a young.
You're going to get
a handheld.
Every time you're going to be on.
Okay, so Roland, you get launch us into this one, huh?
This is our last full session. It's probably the most important one. It's the one that addresses the future. We don't even want to really allocate specific time. We really want to make this open-ended in as far as the format is concerned. And the topic would be a very simple one: the future of the industry, the future of the technology, the future of the business. Not everybody agreed with me, but I always felt that maybe the key players in determining where this is going, where this is heading, are not necessarily the consumers, the skydivers or the tunnel flyers, are not even the operators necessarily. If there are any paradigms to be changed, I mean, it starts right at this level. The manufacturers, the ones who come up with the new concepts, the new ideas in terms of technology, in terms of the hardware. And everything else, in my opinion at least, evolves from there. And we would like to do this in a fairly loose form, where we would say starts. I could look at Eric, and Eric could say, well, I'm ready to take that ball and go with it. What would be your prediction if this is ever going to happen again, let's say in 2 years' time? What will have happened in the 2 years between now and then?
Well, 2 years is a very short time. I think we have to look a bit further into the future, because if you plan a project now, it's probably not realized in 2 years from now. But let's say what we see, and I think most people will agree that we see much more variation in terms of sizes. That's already happening right now. We see very small tunnels in order to reduce cost, but we also see the completely opposite, where we see very huge tunnels built in the Middle East. A topic that I didn't hear these days is actually the idea of having multiple tunnels into one building, because as Actiflow, we actually made a design of the tunnel in Utrecht in the Netherlands, which is the first tunnel in Europe, or the first facility to have 2 tunnels in one building. And I think this concept only has advantages, basically, because we were talking about costs earlier today, and if you realize 2 tunnels into one building, you build cheaper, at least per tunnel. You have much more flexibility in planning of personnel and in planning of also customers coming. You can probably negotiate better energy rates to buy energy, and you could you're more flexible in personnel also. You can share personnel over 2 tunnels. So in my opinion, it really has a lot of benefits, and I don't understand why there are not more places where they combine 2 tunnels. At least if the market's there, if there are enough people with enough purchasing power at least, but I think that concept can be interesting.
Would anyone like to pick up on that comment? Simon?
Yeah, we have 3. So Orlando, where we had a single tunnel, the first original tunnel. We went into International Drive and put a twin tunnel there. That was quite interesting. Again, you're right on peak times. It's really efficient. You have to have a high volume place to do that. Mirdif Mall was the first one in Dubai. They have twin 10s, and they've been there for quite a while. It's not the most popular mall in Dubai. And then in China, there's one in Chongqing with twin tunnels, but they're slightly distant from one another. I do agree, if you're in a really busy place, it's a great idea. And there are definitely some synergies in doing that.
Yeah. I can also. I'm not a skydiver myself, but I could also imagine that it opens up also new ways for competition. You could actually have 2 people skydiving or body flying at the same time, doing a routine, doing a, let's say, head-to-head competition where you have a winner and a loser. So it might also open up new things.
I will say the world's most expensive wind tunnel failure was a twin tunnel.
Yeah, I know.
That was in San Diego.
Yeah.
It's now a really nice homeless shelter, and it cost the owner $45 million.
Yeah.
Oh well. Who would like to follow on? We can go in order. Jan, the question initially was the broad one of where do we see the market evolving, how do we see things going forward, and where do you see things over the next couple of years?
Actually, I don't know if I'm the right visionary, but as I can see now, the audience or the clients of the wind tunnel business, there are generally three groups, and each of these groups has a bit different requirements. So there is a general public. For them, it's important not to be that expensive, and I think it will be. I mean, the trend to create maybe smaller wind tunnels, which will be more affordable. Then there is the second group of the people who are the spot flyers and these profit flyers who are looking for, of course, also cheapest, but a bit bigger size and high quality of the flow, and this is probably the future of maybe other improvements of this technology generally. And then there is a third part, which are the militaries, which has slightly different requirements as well. So I think that the market maybe will be focused on three different focuses, but in general, I don't see that there will be a big difference in the technology finally, because there is just the wind which flows around.
So it will be driven more by the market rather than by the tech
I think,
aspects, and that's most people agree on that. Ivar, you mentioned, I know we're going in order around here. You were talking a lot about small tunnels the other day, but I don't want to get you into that particular space, but where do you see the market evolving?
I think maybe my company is the one of few who are doing whole range of different tunnels, yeah. And I think I disagree with that manufacturers are putting up the trend, yeah. I would say the buyers are putting the trend, yeah. And in my experience, I had a couple of cases when actually the buyer invented new things, yeah. For instance, we were building one tunnel for a Sheikh of Bahrain, and he said, "Oh, I want to have the office on the top of the building. Why don't you make the door for me to just jump in?" Yeah, and we came up with this idea of base jumping in a tunnel. Yeah, and actually the Sheikh invented that. Yeah, we just put a credit for us. Yeah, so that's one of the things. And right now we are working with very different industries, like. Let's say in my portfolio, there's a big chunk of show business people, you know, and the requirements are way different than what you people's need. Yeah, for example, they need something to be hidden under this stage. Yeah, so that's another requirement. You need to make it really compact, really small. Yeah, and when you do something like that, then you are seeing some new advancements in this technology, and you can implement the same knowledge from a show business back to the skydiving business, yeah. So I would say it's you know, in my case at least, the future will be defined by experiences we are getting from different industries, yeah. Just to repeat, military industry, film industry, show business industry, skydivers, kids, all of them are different, yeah. So. What I think we need to please all of them, and also don't forget about investors. Yeah, we have to think what they want, and they obviously want to get their money back. They want to make profits. Yeah, so you know that's what I see.
We'll keep moving along, Alberto. We'll come back to you, Anton, and we'll get the rest of the panel. Simon, we'll skip over you first time through because I know you have some quite ample things to say. So, Alberto?
Okay, I think I would like to see that the tunnels in the future are safer, and it's all our responsibility that instead of trying to avoid and put costs down to make the tunnel cheaper, we actually invest a little bit to make this tunnel safer. Me, myself, being part of tunnel instructor, I guess I'm a little bit obsessed with safety. Like someone said, I was an adrenaline seeker when I was young. I did all kind of things, base jumping, flying planes, anything you could imagine. And when you get older, you start thinking, wait a minute, this is a business. It has to be something 100% safe, because if someone hurts themselves, it's not going to be good for the sport or anything. there is something called this base door, which people think is a lot of fun, and we were talking about it yesterday, which I think is the most dangerous thing in the world for this kind of business. Like I imagine myself in whatever, 20 meters high, and I'm jumping into a tunnel that suddenly switches off. I don't care if I have carbon fiber blades or metal blades, it doesn't matter. I'm going to hurt myself and probably I'm going to die. So us, as part of the tunnel instructor organization, when people want to walk in and say, oh, we want to be part, there's certain limitations. And I hope in the future the tunnels are safer for the sake of everyone, because if people start hurting themselves on them, it's not going to be, it's my opinion, don't get upset. You're gonna hit me back on that. But anyway, I think obviously the future comes with the smaller tunnels. We build a lot of big tunnels, like Simon was saying, there's a certain amount of skydivers, and they're not growing at the speed of the tunnels are growing. So there's a lot of locations that are much smaller with smaller populations, and then in those places you can make investments of 2.5 million euros, whatever dollars, and put these small tunnels, and a lot of, or mainly the fun flyers will fly on them. So I think the future hopefully will be safer. I think it will be with the smaller tunnels, and if I look in even in a longer time, in 40 years' time, I think probably in 40 years' time, tunnels will be pretty boring. There will be something else invented, like, I don't know, like if you were in the moon, you will walk into a room and you will be floating. But I think for the next 30 years, till we get to those 40, I think in 40 years, people will invent something completely new to wind tunnels, and we will move on to something else.
You mentioned, because I was just talking to someone this morning, you mentioned smaller tunnels and safety. I understand there are specific safety challenges for smaller tunnels.
Well,
I mean, because they're smaller doesn't mean there's less risk, is what I'm saying.
No, I mean, basically, if you build a big tunnel, the smaller it's pretty much, you can scale it. It's not as simple as that, but as long as if you have a diffuser that diffuses the air, if you have a soft net, there are certain things that most of the tunnels nowadays have. If you can implement all those things in the smaller tunnels, you're also keeping it safer. I think it's safer a smaller tunnel than a bigger tunnel for fun flyers, because you can control the people in a much easier way. Instead of having to run, I mean, in the big tunnels, which I can't wait to fly on it, I have to say, if there's an accident on the other side of the tunnel, you get the spotter to run and get it there, it's going to be hard. But on the small tunnels, the flyer is in there, so the spotter is like half meter. If there is a mistake, it's already catching it. So definitely, I think the smaller tunnels are safer, for sure. Yeah.
Okay, Andre, on the general question, you've had a chance to hear it, Anton, we will come back to you. What is your view on where things are going?
Should I just talk loud?
Sorry?
What, you want this?
All right.
Yeah.
No, I don't care, I can talk loud.
No, put it.
They were recording it.
Better.
Well, first of all, I have to explain that from the first day when I got introduced to tunnel flying, or okay, not from the first try, from the second try, about 8 years ago, straight away I became a believer that tunnel flying and, well, indoor skydiving, body flying, however you call it, it has actually a greater potential than any other aviation sport out there. But it does take a lot of development. The way I see it, we with body flying and indoor skydiving, we're pretty much where, I don't know, surfing was 100 years ago, right? It is a new element. It is a sport that involves, playing with an element, and it is cool. People love playing with elements, and it does have a potential to become super popular, but we're not there, not even halfway there. And there has been several questions addressed by, well, sport authorities, like what are we gonna do, manufacturers and operators? And here the problem is that we as manufacturers, I mean, we do produce expensive machines. We have potential to, make them better, but still our abilities are a little bit limited. So all that we can do is provide better machines to the operators, because those are the ones who actually take the most amount of revenue. Because like our revenues, as our margins as manufacturers are a fracture of what operators get if they have a successful project, and this is what they're supposed to have building machines. So we as manufacturers, the only thing we can do, we can provide them safer tunnels. And here I completely agree with Alberto, and this is exactly what we're doing in Tunnel Tech. Like we are actually, for the last year we had this conversation with tunnel instructor, and we're trying to, somehow ally to make the sport safer and actually to make machines safer, because I have to say that in many machines out there, a lot of machines out there, some basic safety features are just overlooked, or I don't know. I don't want to say neglected, my poor English, but I truly believe that some things should be reconsidered building machines. They would make them much safer. I guess you guys know, right? Anyway, safety, one thing. Energy efficiency that you had a discussion about in the previous session. I also would like to join here, because I do believe that we build most of energy efficient machines out there. And why it is important, even though it is a third line of expenses for the operators, I think operators have to change their business. Operators have to look on other industries where entertainment feeds sportsmen, and sportsmen are not a source of income anymore. I mean, it was fun. Okay, for 10 years it was fun. Good, you make your cut. But now you have to rethink it. Maybe if you, as operators, okay, first of all, I shouldn't be addressing it to you. I should be addressing it to you, because you are the biggest operator out there, right? So you have so much potential comparing to all those, 3-4 tunnels operators that we have out there. And you can do so much change to the sport and to the industry in general. So everybody agree on one fact, that the industry goes down. Like the entertainment revenues are going down. Like the tunnels are not shooting through the roof like they were, 5-10 years ago. Right? And the problem is that we don't have anything in between the one-timers, not first-timers, one-timers, and the sportsmen, which we have just 1,000. So all these big brands that we want to come in, all this publicity, it comes with quantity. And quantity comes when people can refer themselves to the ones that they see. This is what makes sports popular. The connection person has between himself and the sport that he's looking at. If we're talking about MMA, well, everyone fought in school, didn't you? If we're talking about surfing, well, there is 35 million of surfers that started surfing, like that got lucky and that lived by the sea. And if we're talking about climbing, well, climbing has been popular long before we invented indoor skydiving, right? So there is a ton of people, or at least, climbing people walking the mountains. That's just enough for them, right? Anyway, for each of these sports, there is a ton of people that can connect. In our sport, no. So this is solely responsibility of the operators to fill up this gap between one-timers and sport flyers. And we as the manufacturers, well, we can make the tunnel time super cheap. How much does tunnel time cost in terms of energy? In our tunnels, 40 euros an hour, really? And we market it way more as the operators. So, I don't know. I think I'm pretty much done.
We'll come back. I don't want to leave Anton. We don't want to leave Anton hanging out over here, and then you come back and we'll kick it all off again. But your initial take on some of these comments, and then we'll go through. We'll let Simon take up
the first comment on what we've heard.
The ball. Yeah.
Then, in comment to what you said, I believe that wave surfing, if I remember the history correctly, took off in the 50s after that movie about that young girl. Am I correct? There was a move and there was a certain hype. Correct? I forget her name. Yes, that's it.
Beach Boys.
That's it. That plus the music plus the invention of the plastic thruster it's what they sort of took off. So I suppose that's what you're looking for, or?
I mean, an indoor skydiving.
Yes. Is that what you mean? Because you said we're like surfing was in
well,
1920.
Surfing, the difference with surfing that any boy or a girl living by a sea, if he has nothing but a board, a plastic broken board, he can already go and start surfing.
Yeah.
Indoor skydiving, if you're a boy or a girl living by a tunnel and you found a suit in the trash bin next to the tunnel, you can wear the suit and sit next to the tunnel and keep watching people fly.
Yes, agreed. But then specifically, what did you mean when you said that we were like wave surfing were 100 years ago? That is 1920. What did you mean by
the
that?
level of popularity. Look, like all the sports that are involving playing with elements, they are popular. All of them. And all of them are popular. And I believe that playing with your body with an element of air is going to be crazy popular. 30 years from now, it will be like a gym if we do things right. And I don't know. This is my general idea, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Anton, also, if you could talk a bit more generically about the initial question, which was the future over the next couple of years.
Well, I mean, I represent a very small and a very new, call it even a fringe aspect of indoor skydiving. But if I am to comment on vertical wind tunnels, I would agree that small wind tunnels would seem, if not the way to go, but an interesting way to go, to make it cheap to have many of them and as a way into the sport, especially for kids.
Okay. Now, Simon, you haven't had a chance to make any comments to respond to some of the things we've heard already, so let's turn things over to you, and then we can keep the ball rolling after that.
I kept a couple of notes during this thing. I've learned loads. Thank you, everybody, for that wisdom. And I used to do a lot of conferences in the radio industry, and I quite like these prediction sessions because it's quite good to nail a few things and decide what we may or may not do. And you asked for 2 years, which is a short time frame. I definitely think that, and I'll address some of the questions asked, Jill yesterday, and Alberto yesterday, and Andre today, etc. I think as an industry, we have to change a lot. And that'll start with things like the technology, safety and training, ASTM. We talked about Jan has been working on that with Strajona on the ASTM stuff. We've been working on it. And we will be seen as rides. As we become more popular, we get regulated. The indoor climbing industry is pretty regulated in the way that the health and safety, etc., is done. We will have to do that, and there will be regimes that go with that, from your morning engineering tests right through to ISO employment, and we will have to become regulated. And that really takes me to the point of govern or be governed. And if we don't decide to be self-governing, we will be governed. Someone will come along and say, this is an industry out of control, and it might start in one country, or it might start in a group of countries, and they will want to take control of us. And I don't think that's a healthy thing. I think for us to be self-governed, the scuba diving industry did it, and you look at PADI, who rose to the top of self-governance, and they deal with training and qualification. And Alberto asked me yesterday, he looked at me and said, why don't you do it? We have to do it. And we got to the point with a few tunnels who wanted to join IBA, and we had to pull out. And the reason that we pulled out is because if you're going to put safety and training in, there's no compromise. There's no pulling away from it. And if we were going to put that in somebody else's tunnel, where they thought of it as a guideline, or they thought of it as a voluntary thing, we'll take your training. We'll do safety meetings. But what are the consequences if they don't? I know the consequences in our tunnels and our franchisees if they don't. They will get a breach of contract, they would lose a license. If you're one of our AGM, one of our general managers, you couldn't expect to be in a job tomorrow if you're not running safety meetings, if you're not doing this stuff. There is consequence. And unfortunately, it's called policing by some people, but policing isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's for the good of the citizens. And when you're the owner, and you're the guy or the girl who ends up in jail because there's been an accident that was totally avoidable in your tunnel, you start thinking about it differently as an investor, as an owner, as a staff member, and as a customer. And we owe that to our people. We are a serious grown-up industry and we cannot afford to injure people. Sure, when you fly, as we do with all the tunnel industry, 3-4 million people a year, there will be accidents, like trip accidents, just like walking down the street. And that's expected. And the health and safety executive around the world, they know that. But they're not going to see negligence and let us get away with it. The insurance industry will clamp down on us. We're getting our helmets rated. They tried to rate our jumpsuits, for goodness sake, in France. You know, that's what will happen. It will be done to us if we don't do it ourselves. And us as manufacturers all have a big role to play in that, and us as operators have a big role to play in that. So I recommend we look at PADI. And so until the tunnels turn around and say, yeah, we'll take your systems and we'll abide by the system as you do with PADI, then we can't do everything together. The tunnels have to be agreed to be bound by it. It's not a fair weather program. It's for life. That's what you do. In the technology, I think we've got more efficiency to come. We've definitely got safety to come, but we've got more efficiency to come. We have more tier 2 and 3 markets. So the big markets, a lot of those have gone. There's still some. But the tier 2 and 3 markets, you know, the grassroots, as I talk about, how we're getting into the small towns and villages, it is definitely going the small tunnels. That's more efficient, it's cheaper, and we can definitely do a lot more of that. It's battery technology, it's energy efficiency, and so I think we'll see more of that. But we have to bring a lot of safety into that as well. And you know, small is really hard to make safe, partly because of positioning of the fans and ingestation and things like that. And I know how much Erodium have done on that and others, and we've definitely done a lot on it as well. That was the biggest thing to stop us going in that direction to begin with. Competition we spoke a lot about, and I think listening to Hagen was really interesting. Listening to Reinhardt was really interesting. We must listen outside of ourselves. We've got to get out the forest. And it's all about packaging, presentation, formats, getting the media interested in what we want to do. And a big point that Andre makes, it's about being relatable, being able to associate yourself with it. Everybody can associate themselves with all the sports that we've been talking about. But it's really hard to associate yourself with skydiving and indoor skydiving because you don't know what people are doing beyond the flight. You just don't have a clue. Even with skating, you think, yeah, I could do that. Well, probably not my case, but you think you can do that. You think you can drive a Formula One car. You think you can drive a rally car. You think you can throw a dart, hit a snooker ball. We can relate to all of those things, and we're a really hard sport to relate to. And then our training grounds are so expensive. You know, as Andre said, you know, you get an old board. It doesn't matter what it is. You can go jump in the sea. You get a skateboard. You put some wheels on it. Whatever they are, you can go do that stuff. The cost of practice is so expensive, and the cost of getting good is so expensive. And so if we can find ways of doing that, we had a thing where we did a third. We wanted to reduce the price of a tunnel by a third, the price of finance by a third, and the price of operation by a third. If we could reduce all of that, then we could bring indoor skydiving down to a much more manageable amount. All that stuff will hit insurance. And by the way, this room should look at what we charge for coaching. We are the most expensive coaching in the world. I don't know any coaching that charges $300 an hour.
I mean, there are some, obviously, but that's the norm. $250, $300 an hour. Sure, it takes more than an hour. I get that.
But again, the reason for this is tunnel price. It's time.
No, this is the coaching on top of the tunnel. Why? It comes from the skydiving industry.
So much for coaching.
Because it's coming from the skydiving industry.
And because there isn't enough people. Yeah.
Well, yes, this is one side of things, but then there is another side of things. You're paying $500, $600, $700 for an hour. It's going to be 20% efficiency of what you get if you pay extra $300 for a coach, right? So, or 20%, 10% efficiency. That's why
He doesn't want you to do.
I hate those things. This is the reason why coaches are so expensive. Like, if you look at Russia, where tunnel time dropped down like to $150 United States dollars in small tunnels, like coaches charge there $70, and then because nobody's gonna pay twice the flight time. Like, people would go fly just for 2 hours instead of flying 1 hour with a coach. So, like, I'm sure that these two subjects are very much interconnected.
I think coaching is going to go down, and I don't even give it 5 years. Like, from when I started and I was a coach, I remember I was charging 300 euros an hour. So I worked in a tunnel for less than 6 months. That was my whole formation about the tunnel, and I was charging 300 euros an hour. And a doctor that spends 10 years studying gets an hour, what, 40? He's operating a person that could die, live or die, and he probably gets 40 euros an hour. There is something wrong here. Obviously, it's because there was very little tunnels and there was very few people, but I think eventually in I give it another 5 years, and the price of 1 hour of coaching shouldn't be more than 50 euros, because it doesn't make any sense.
So outside of coaching, because trust me, any tunnel operator can get into coaching and talk about that all day. Consolidation. I think our industry will consolidate, and you see that in all other industries. We will end up consolidating one way or the other, and it could be the manufacturers, and guess what? We talk together from time to time. It could be the operators. We've already bought some, and others will do the same, and there are tunnels for sale, so there will be consolidation within the industry, and that'll be an exciting time, and we'll see that. And my last prediction was really around the summit. And I said yesterday that, did anybody know why we were coming here? And there was a show of one. And I think the interesting thing is that we now know a lot more where we want to go because of the stuff that's been thrown on the table. So I think our next summit in 2 years' time, I think we'll deal much more with operations than we will just about competition. I think we did a lot of competition, and I think that'll sort of pale into insignificance compared to running tunnels. Sales and marketing will become a big part of this. It'll be, we'll be talking about how to become more efficient and run that. And I think the makeup of this will be different. I don't see the guys from Belarus or Royal Caribbean or any of our other purchasers here today. I see one or two operators who come from the skydiving industry. And so I think we'll see that. Sorry, Jill, I didn't answer your question either. You asked yesterday, why don't people bid for these events? And I think that's a two-way street as well. I think when the FAI make it more attractive to bid for, then it will become one of those things that we'll want to bid for. It's quite formulaic as to what we have to do when you bid for those things, and they're not particularly attractive to bid for. And other colleagues around the room were saying to me, actually, does it matter? Because there's so many tunnels running their own competitions, be it, Bedford, the fantastic Windor games, the stuff in the Middle East, that because they're doing their own stuff, a lot of competitors prefer to go to those, even though there's some glory, a little bit like Olympic glory in being the world champion. And then someone said, can anybody name the VFS current world champion or the dynamic four-way world champion at the moment? And none of us in the group could. And I know you could, Domi, but like you ask all... But you ask all of that. But the main thing was it wasn't necessarily that interesting that it had, and we have to make it, we have to build heroes and rock stars. And but the rock stars are probably going to come out of the UFC kind of style than they are out of the World Championship kind of style. And so I see them running in parallel, but it's not necessarily an easy thing to run that. We just ran the nationals, and we had to spend more on judges and travel and after parties than we did on anything else, and that was mandated by the NACs and FAI, etc. It's an obstacle.
If people do want to respond, we've got a mic here. So we do have Patrice.
And even
please.
the World Championships, they were subsidized as well. They had to be subsidized.
Well, this is several times that we are talking about rock stars, and I perfectly agree with that. But we have also to look outside the system. The rock star already exists outside. And in my career, I've been lucky enough to be in the system with a man named Nicolas Hulot, who was running a very famous TV show in France, Ushuaïa. At the end, he was a minister of the environment in the ministry. I know that you don't like to talk too much politics, but we have done a lot of things, and this was a rock star. It involved skydiving with us. He was a skydiver with us. When we have tried to do something with him, we said, okay, you want to be with us, you have to become a real skydiver. So, of course, I was doing CF, canopy formation. He went with us, he became a CF worker, and we went and built the pyramid over the pyramid of Cairo in the year of 1995. During this time, he was the rock star, and we became the rock star because he was with us, and we were very fortunate. We get sponsor, we get a lot of money because we are in connection. So if the tunnel and the outdoor as well are good enough with the products to attract also the other rock star, I know that other rock star already existing, but for other reasons, probably about their contract, about the fact we still have a view from the other which is a little bit scaring or whatever. But if we are good enough to attract other rock star, then we don't need to try to create our own rock star, because we also can make them practicing indoor and outdoor. And this is also another issue. I'm afraid that we are a little bit too much centerness and not looking enough outside. I mean, there is a lot of people, the synergy before. The synergy with the companies, the team buildings, the coaching already exists. The synergy with also the other acrobatic sports, it's going to be very helpful for them to teach about, to learn how to feel their body exactly in the air, even if they have not the same feelings, of course, to increase their potential of the inner ear and all that. So rock stars are outside as well.
For sure.
Thank you for that. I would just like to pick up on something, though, that you raised as one of your comments, Simon. The first one, about creating a standard and a sort of safety standard or some standards across the business before it's imposed. You mentioned PADI, which comes from the scuba industry. If you were to think about how this could evolve and how it could be done, would you recommend like trying to follow the template of another industry, or would there be a need to bring together to have some sort of a working group? How would you see that evolving? Or would someone propose what those standards would be and then push them out there and then others would discuss?
So ASTM is a technical standard, and it's like a CE rating or whatever, they all get rated. And that work is well done. And I think Wayne is off to the ASTM conference next week. We've been part of that for a while, and I think it takes about 3 years before it will make its way around. But literally, every manufacturer here will not be able to sell a wind tunnel in most countries in the world after 3 years if they're not ASTM rated.
But how is that, I mean, how does that become an obligation? I mean, who's agreed?
It's exactly the same as if you, right now in France, if you wish to run a wind tunnel, you have to have rated helmets. And otherwise you are governed, and they'll come and close you down. And that's going to be all over Europe with helmets quite soon, and America. So that's why Cookie with their G4, it's now AFNOR rated. Manu gave us the rating number yesterday. And that will just extend, but that's going to extend now to the machine.
But is that an industry regulation or is that an imposed regulation?
It's
That's
imposed.
what I'm saying.
That's
an
imposed.
imposed regulation. Okay. So is there a way to counterbalance that with something?
Yeah, be involved.
Self-regulation?
Be involved in the making of the regulation. That's why he's going to the conference next week.
Sorry,
And
Wayne.
that's-
Yeah,
and
it's
with,
important
with
to
our
have a comment from
technical
you on
guys.
this. Yeah.
That's why
If you could
Jan's been talking to them. That's.
Yeah, I think Simon's point there is about taking control, doing it ourselves before somebody else tells us what to do, and by coming together as a group, we can anticipate those problems. We can see what problems coming. Is like the helmet was a great example, where we spoke to Paul Mayer at Twinwoods quite a long time ago, and Paul said we should just do this ourselves. Let's not wait for a formal regulation. Let's just get on and do it. But at the time, it was we didn't have the ways of doing it. But it's any standard. We're going to get regulated, so let's do it. Let's anticipate it, get out there and actually demonstrate. One of the things with ASTM is we fast-tracked it because we were able to demonstrate that we were already compliant in so many different areas, particularly the training and the safety side. And these are the people, Disney. We consult with Disney, we consult with Six Flags parks. They're the people that are giving us the guidance, and they were blown away by how far along the path our industry already was. So actually it's quite good to take control. So that standard is now going to fit our purposes, and that's the point. Let's make the standards that work for us.
With the helmets, we nearly ended either up with a motorbike type helmet in a wind tunnel, or with a skydiving helmet where they had to have a release. And that's where it was going until we managed to get stuck in there as an industry. Not iFly, but we as an industry got stuck in there. And again, with some help from the FFP. But it would have gone down the skydiving route if we weren't careful. So we have to go regulate ourselves.
I brought this up very briefly yesterday, and I would like to put a little bit more emphasis on it now. Obviously, when you say, it's iFly, but it's also industry. I mean, they initiated this process. It was published and widely published. I picked up on it somewhere online. And then I sent you, we didn't have all that much exchanges. I sent you a notification of this process being in progress right now. And did that interest you at all, or will you take part in this in the future, or how do you see this coming now? Yeah.
Well, again, we're very small and new, but if it's of any interest or benefit to the summit, we very much appreciated that information, and we've looked into this issue. Inventing a new sport with potential dangers is very scary to me personally. So we've spent a lot of time being super cautious, doing everything in very, very, very small incremental steps, documenting everything. Of course, with the machinery, the mechanical safety system, etc., but also with our training and safety program. So we're aiming for something very similar to what Mr. Ward is talking about. And for that reason, we thought it was fantastic to see this standardization process coming. So when you go to the conference, you will meet actually our technical director there, Dr. Peter Uran. He's coming there. So we're putting quite a lot of emphasis on this, and to us, it will be, well, call it not a protection, but it will be, we're new, we're so small, and suppose something happens. We're trying our really, really best to be as safe as we can. But like I said, we have mostly blank pages.
Maybe the question should also go to the other manufacturers. Yeah. Ivars, Jan, Eric, will you be there?
Well, first of all, I don't consider Actiflow as an actual manufacturer because we don't manufacture anything. We're basically a partner for most of the people here. I cannot answer your question directly, but of course we're also active in quite some other industries. We develop also products in the medical field, for example, and there, of course, you already have that. I mean, if you look at the procedures that we have to go through, also as a designer, to get a medical product on the market in the end, it takes quite some effort. But that doesn't. It's of course for the good of the customer in the end. So I can only say it's a good idea, but it will also change the way we work as designers or manufacturers. It will influence the way of documenting things, the way of looking at the product. So yeah.
Ivars, you're definitely a key player in the United States as well, because a lot of the work that's being done in the film industry is being done with your equipment. Will you be at the conference as well?
I'm not specialist in this ASTM standards, so I will not go myself, but we do have the department who is taking care of safety. There is a bunch of people focusing on that, yeah. And I think in my experience, we have learned a big lesson from big players. And again, I can mention Disney. And we spent 1 week every day talking about different ways how to die. Yeah. So and it's called hazard analysis in that company. Yeah. So people are actually taking very seriously all the possible accidents which might happen, and some accidents are unavoidable. You cannot invent anything which will save in such particular ways. Yeah? But I think that the good thing is to know these potential hazards, where they come from. Yeah? And I remember we ended up in Disney with at least 40 ways to die, and let's say 20 of them was easy to avoid, 10 was medium, and the 10 was there's no way we can do anything about that, but we have to know about that. So then we signed the contracts with the performers, and they knew if they cross the line, they're gonna be seriously injured. Yeah. So where I'm heading that sometimes it's not so much about official, badge. Okay, I did this certification or that kind of certification, but it's about understanding the problem, and it's about facing the problem directly. You have to invent a way to be foolproof technology, and I just want to comment on what we discussed about this base jumping thing. Yeah, we know you can die, yeah, but because of that, we improved the safety of the lower net significantly. And the two newest tunnels we are deploying right now gonna have the safety net which can absorb energy from that jumping out of the base jumping chamber. Yeah. So, every problem is actually forcing you to find a solution. And when you find solution, again, you can use this solution as a new standard for your tunnels. I can say one new thing which we invented recently, and we actually built in the two latest patents. We don't have the doorstep anymore. So you as a flyers know that the major accidents can happen if you are flying and jumping into the waiting chamber, and you can hit this hard piece doorstep. Yeah, we don't have it anymore. And I think it's a major, and this is something I'm ready to share with you guys to make this industry safer. And all these things, if we do it together, because we focused so many years for competition, oh, this is my patent, yeah, I'm gonna keep it for me, yeah. Nobody else can use it, and I can make a ton of money.
Okay, let's not go into the patent thing.
Yeah, but I'm looking to Simon, yeah.
Let's go into the safety and the future. Can I reply to what you were saying?
Sure, yeah.
Because I get a little bit excited.
And there's no 20 meters, by the way. So don't exaggerate.
Is it more?
No, it's 10 meters.
10 meters, okay. Anyway, it's funny that you say there is 40 ways of dying, 20 you could survive, 10 you can solve, and 10 you will die. That's a very bad ratio. Like 25% of death. It's a joke.
Yeah, it's a joke,
It's a
but
joke.
you have to know this, yeah?
But what I'm saying is like there is no one in this place that knows more than your company about open tunnels and safety in open tunnels. I think in closed tunnels you're a little bit behind.
That's what you think, yeah.
Everybody can think. Why I think so is because I had, well, I'm not going to go into names. I had your top guy coming to my place to get rated, and he was your top guy. And when I was making examples the other day of
You know, I comment again, because my top guys went also to ABM to learn from others.
Yes.
That's a different thing.
This is good.
That's not like we don't know anything. We want to learn what you know the better.
I didn't say you don't know anything. But I said, when Simon was saying that if we all united, it would be good, I don't want to pick in how good or bad they are your people in closed tunnels. I'm emphasizing that you in the open tunnels are the ones with the most experience. So let us learn how to do that in the open tunnels, and let us help you a little bit, because I know you know most of the things in closed tunnels. Would that be good for the industry, for the future, which is what we're talking about right now, the future of the industry?
Exactly.
Yeah, you think it's a good idea?
I think it's a really good idea, and it's a good we met, and we can learn from each other to make industry safer. That's objective.
So in 2 years' time, we're going to be sitting down here, and maybe there is something going on here?
I think so.
All right. Okay. Okay, anyway, that's enough from me. I'm not going to go into anything else.
This might be a little bit of a far-off example, but I think that the automobile industry and road traffic administrations, at least in the civilized world, has done a pretty good job if you look at traffic safety, say, in the 1950s compared to now. And I think that the big shift in that was I think conceptually it was in the 60s, and then it was implemented in the 70s. And the United States were quite leading, as I remember it. There was a doctor called William Haddon who came up with a lot of provocative concepts, such as crashes without injuries, etc., which provoked a lot of people back then. But what it led to was, I mean, obviously crash cages, seat belts, etc., etc. And these, what they did was they looked at a set of different variables, such as the operator, the driver, which I think is what you talked about when you work with Disney. You tell the operator you have to be safe, you have to within certain limits. Then they looked at the environment, such as the road environment. You know, if you have lamps, you know, if you hit into them, they should brake. They shouldn't just split the car and kill you. And for instance, and also make sure that you don't have big blocks of stones next to the road. It should be open, like any normal highway looked these days, but it didn't back then. And then they also looked at the technology, which in our case would be the tunnels. I've tried to implement a little bit of this when we're starting the review, which is, as you will see, which is why we have a floor and it's padded. The reason I can tell you, because this is not streamed, is because I broke quite a few ribs in the prototype. And I thought, okay, we need padding here. And stuff like that. And I think in general, we're thinking about PADI, obviously, and stuff like that, but I think that also other industries that are very mature, such as the automobile industry and the road traffic administrations, can also perhaps give us some help as we're trying to become, as I perceive all of us want to be, as we become mature, as we become an actual industry, a real sport, maybe make it to the Olympics, maybe not, but something like that, etc.
May I comment?
Yeah.
I actually like very much your putting it to the car industry. And again, explaining you the point about 25% which you cannot avoid. If you go with a car 20 kilometers per hour and you crash the wall, there is no way anything will save you. No seat belt, no this airbag, nothing will save you. That's why even in car industry there is 20% or more, you will die, for sure.
Okay,
you got the point. But we have to
I don't want to fight with you, I want to be friends with you.
And then, yeah, we are friends, of course.
20% of less, it sounds like a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, but you have to learn, you have to know in car industry that if you're passing 60 kilometers per hour in a city and you crash the wall, in 60 kilometers you might have a chance, yeah? But in 120 you will not have a chance, yeah? And you have to explain this to drivers. Hey guys, don't drive 200 kilometers per hour in a city, yeah? Because you're gonna die. And same with instructors, same with coaches. You have to know the hazard.
Okay, I look industry is like we fly people from the age of 3 to 103, which is a great number that you guys put, and I love it, and I always say it myself. We want to make this super safe, at least myself. I have a tunnel, and I want to be, the tunnel I want it to be 100% safe. I never want to have an accident. So every time I'm adding things into this tunnel that could cause an accident, for me, I don't think it's a good idea. I have done base jumping. I think it's the coolest thing in the world. It's a lot of fun. Adding a base jumping door into a wind tunnel, I think is an extra thing that could go wrong. So if we want to make this a sport very wide known, everybody to do it, try to take away the things that could actually cause the death, so it never happened. I can guarantee you, all the people that are here, I can guarantee you that in 30 years' time, if you keep using those doors, someone will die on them. I could bet you money on it. I could bet you whatever you want.
I have a question. You're very obsessed with the base door.
Don't give it to him, don't.
You're very obsessed with the base door. I got it. We'll make it super safe. Trust me. But there are two other aspects that I think are very important safety features of the wind tunnel, and I would like to address every single one sitting here. Why you don't implement it? Why you do not consider the speed drop, for example, at the top of the flight chamber? Why all your tunnels are so tiny? Why people keep hitting the turning lanes up top?
It's not my case.
Okay, maybe. I don't know. Like I'm talking about 3 other manufacturers that are present here. Why? If you are so dedicated to safety, why you don't make your tunnels big enough so people stop doing this? Or why nobody is making a safety net that is deflecting next to the wall? While we all know that during the training, during the ABA training, during the TI training, this is one of the most likely scenarios for a student to go down next to the wall, probably head down. Why nobody is implementing such simple safety features, and we talk so much about it.
I think there is a guy in this room that actually hit the top turning vanes, and he was in hospital for a while. The guy with the 2 hands up. What was the experience like?
Yeah, I can answer this question. I think, Alberto, you put in safety systems for your examiners to try and counter. You put in safety systems for TIs.
Wait, 1 second. Can I say something?
Yeah.
The guy that is sitting over there is obviously a very experienced flyer. He's been on the sport for a very long time. He was the top guy from a tunnel, and everybody makes mistakes. I have to make mistakes myself. So when
Very true. I'm pretty sure I probably spotted you before as well.
So,
but what I'm saying is, yes, there are risks inside the tunnel. There's risks throughout the walls. You can hit them during training students, absolutely. This is why IBA, TI, they put a lot of effort into training examiners to a standard so that you stop this risk. And this is why it's very important moving forward in the future as well, that people look at the standard of these examiners moving forward, not just when they've passed, but also in the future, to make sure they continue the level of safety so that accidents during these training courses don't happen. Yes, you have a wall in front of you. Yes, you're in a wind, so you can propel into that wall. But you also have someone there trained enough to know when those types of things can happen and to be in the correct place and doing the correct thing and saying the correct things to make sure that that isn't a risk which is likely to ever occur.
Was your accident avoidable?
100%. I can give you loads of reasons of how that could have been avoided. We can talk about it if you wish.
Would it be avoidable if you were flying in some other technology? I have no idea what technology you were flying.
Okay, yes.
Let's not mention names.
I'm not
okay.
to mention the name, but if it would have been some other technology.
Okay, the answer is yes.
So it
absolutely.
is possible to avoid accidents like this, building different tunnels.
Absolutely, and I think you should always look at your risk and figure out how you can avoid those risks from happening. Sometimes that does mean changing the technology, absolutely.
Because there's some situations where sticking a person there saying don't do that is definitely not going to avoid that risk. There's still definitely the possibility that you can find yourself in a situation where you're going to end up very injured, like myself.
So, following your experience, like, how many tunnels do you think are built neglecting, features like this?
Most. If I'm being very, very honest, there are many, many things within the industry that are potential hazards, and if you were to go into the majority of tunnels and look at every single aspect, you will absolutely find something that could be changed to mitigate the risks.
If I can react on you actually and those comments, I will use this proximity to the car business. Actually, I have a car which can go really faster than I would like to, and I will never use it. Not only because it's possible, I will just not use it because there is a risk of death. So I think there is combination of the rules actually which should be issued. There is some request on the manufacturers, and there is some request from the operators. Someone asking, and some of those requests are actually not compatible. So then we have to solve it in the way of the operational rules or the standards of safety measures and other stuff. So I think that.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the accidents we're referring to are happening on a regular training speeds. Of course, not for the first timers, but for the sportsmen, regular training speeds.
I don't know this history of the details of it.
It does happen. Like, I've hit the turning vanes, and it's not nice. But it's what you're saying, is like, why don't we try to build things? Because mistakes can happen. I learned this lesson when I used to work with Paul Meyer at Bodyfly, and we had this guy, I'm not going to say the name. He was one of the smartest guys that I know. And he left this platform out, and the whole tunnel blew up. Paul Meyer almost wanted to kill it, and so on. And I learned there that people, no matter how, because they can be tired, they could be hungover, they could not slept the night before. They can make mistakes. So if we can all build things that even if you make a mistake, nothing happens, like what he was saying, that would be brilliant. There is another thing. Maybe I'm a little bit too obsessed with safety. In our tunnel, we implemented maybe I'm a little bit obsessed. We implemented some lasers and some lights, so if you go up 10 meters, the tunnel turns in red, and you get tunnel time taken away if you're an instructor. If you're a customer, you get pulled out and you get told off. Once again, to try to avoid them, because when they're at the top, our tunnel is pretty high. There is almost 20 meters tunnel. If you're at the top and there is a shutdown, it doesn't matter if you have carbon fiber plates, metal plates, you're going to hurt yourself a lot. And if you're a belly flyer and you... Sorry.
I respect your safety, I respect the level of safety you're trying to keep. I completely agree with everything you're saying, except this. You can build a better tunnel that can get shut down, and you jump after it's shut down, and you're going to land safe. We're going to...
How?
We met on Lux Fly in about a month, and we tried.
I'm going to copy it if I see it, you know that.
Yes, okay. We're going to do it. But anyway, you can build a tunnel safe enough for that.
But this is fantastic that companies like you are actually taking this safety into consideration so much, and you're trying to develop and come up with new things that will make the whole thing safe. Maybe this base jumping door, you come up with a way that is safe, and then it will be the coolest toy in Earth. A base jumping door that doesn't have not even 1% of chance that it will go wrong.
Oh, there is always a percentage.
Well, then I don't like it.
Of course. Look, there is a percentage that something can go wrong as soon as you get in the airflow. Seriously, exact same second, there is a chance that something gonna go out of control. If everything seems under control, you're not going fast enough.
Okay. But this is good. This is how I take my personal life.
But there is so much we can do, and as a manufacturers, I think the biggest problem of the industry these days is that we're trying to chase the operators that are trying to cut short everywhere, and furthermore, the manufacturers are trying to give a better offer. And if we say it straight, manufacturers are saving on safety because they're trying to sell a little bit cheaper tunnels. I think this just like there is nothing to discuss. It's just a point to reconsider. Maybe we should not give up so much safety. Maybe you make your tunnels a little bigger, a little better, a little safer. Just do it.
I think that's, sorry, I'm talking too much. But I think, I completely agree with you, but we're going back to the point. Before, I've seen tunnels where they actually start running them without a driver, without a spotter. The spotter walks in, is doing the coaching, and he comes out, change the speed, goes in.
With operators, that's another thing that we need to bring all the operators to the table. Why we don't have them? Because like every single topic that has been discussed on the last 9 panels, it should involve operators because like they're inseparable from this industry. This industry is driven by 3 factors. Sports organizations, which are organizing things that are responsible to get the sport to the public. Manufacturers, our responsibility is safety of everyone involved and better tools for the operators. And well, operators who are making the most amount of profit, who has the most driving force out of everyone in this industry altogether, starting with you.
Well, you're right, but once again, I think, for example, they have the IBA, they are very particular about always having your spotter, your coach, and this and that. So maybe his tunnels, I will believe, is one of the safest. There's a couple of things that will make it slightly safer, but the personnel they have, the way they have always someone on the door, the way they're always tracking all those things, makes it much safer than probably the safest tunnel run by guys that go, okay, we don't need a spotter because we're going to save a salary there, and it's a mix of everything, I guess, at the end of the day.
We have Summit to actually like bring all the counterparts that normally sitting in their offices and talking over email.
Yeah, we have a comment. We have a comment here from the floor. Would you say identify yourself?
Hello, my name is Anna, and nobody knows me here. That's okay. I've been your target audience for the past 4 years, and for the past 2 years and a half, I've been mystery shopper. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's someone who goes into a company, into a store, and buys something just for the goal of seeing how that shop works, that company works, and I've been doing this for my own reasons and my own research, and I found some very interesting conclusions that I think you should know, because this could help the industry move a little bit forward. So, Andrew, answering your question, what's going on at the end of the day, everything's about money. Most manufacturers are also investors and operators are at the same time. In some cases, not all the time, but in some cases. And I see a huge gap between what's going on in the American industry with iFly and Europe, and where we are in Europe, which is where I come from, worried about how can we cut all these costs. We're worried about personnel, we're worried about electricity. They're focusing on customer relationship, building this synergy with other companies that could create a long-term relationship with the customers, and that's creating and generating income for a very long time. So what I see on the other hand, it's that we blame that, manufacturers are very expensive. Well, are they? Or what is happening that we're doing wrong? And I find that sometimes what we are doing wrong, or some operators are doing wrong, it's that they have a very poor management. You need to look inside your company and ask yourself, what are we doing wrong? What's happening? Where are we spending the money that is not worth it? And where are we spending the money and it's really generating that income? Because it's what I just said, at the end of the day, we want the return of the investment as fast as possible. And I would like to say also that if we are also worried about safety, and I think Patrice said it yesterday, why don't we implement drug control in our tunnels? Because we know we come from an industry that's like a great, cool industry, and everybody's flying, and everybody's very happy and likes to party, but that's safety on the tunnel. And that could really damage our image today and in the future. And that could be very important to create a system that works for all of us.
I think.
So that's it.
I think you have a point.
Who you are again, so we know for the future?
What did she say?
No,
Why don't we implement drug
Ana.
tests in the
My name is
tunnels?
Ana Miravalles.
Yeah, we do.
So, Anna, you're involved with a venture in the
Fair.
Canary Islands, is that right? Yeah.
No, for the customers, we will go out of business. No, Anna, I think Anna is right. It's something we should do, implement. IBA already does it. I didn't know, but it makes complete sense. And luckily, we are in an industry where the skydivers, if we did tests, probably half of the staff of the tunnels will have to get fired. But it's something that we should definitely take the lead of what the IBA does. I mean, I can't say much about this topic, to be honest. You wouldn't... Right.
Well, America does a lot of drug testing in most companies. So there's a standard drug testing. And certainly on hire, you always get drug tested. You have to, before you even go for the thing, you have to turn up somewhere within X amount of hours and you get drug tested. And then there's a random drug testing program amongst staff. I'm not sure how frequent it is, but it is random. And but that's a big thing in America. And mystery shopping is another thing that we definitely do a lot of. And we hire a firm to come mystery shop all of our tunnels, and they do so many per month every tunnel. So,
do you do the drug testing in Europe as well?
No, we don't. No, I don't think we do.
We have a comment from Rob here.
Back to synergy, back to the future. You guys brought up coaching. Well, Skydiving University, our key focus of why we created it is coaching. And so obviously this is from my heart. I think coaching happening in the tunnels is a good thing. You're talking about the rates. I think the rates are demanded or paid out appropriately to the coaches that deserve it. I think coaches that try to match rates from certain great athletes and coaches and try to match our rates is inappropriate. I agree. 50 euros I would never take. So I think it's got to do with the person and the quality of the coaching. And I've always promoted from day one in Skydiving University that the quality is worth the money. So if you got somebody that's a superstar that can create the results, then please let's not criticize or be judgmental on that person's rates. Now, however, future for the wind tunnels. Let's look at Skydive to Land. Skydive to Land is not a drop zone that focuses on tandem. Maybe some of you don't know that. Bob Hallett has a different philosophy. He wants it to be a skydiving drop zone, equal for all disciplines. And so tandem is obviously there, but he doesn't want to see it get too large. So how does Skydive to Land exist? Why do we have the airplanes that we have and continue to operate 365 days a year? Because we have the most awesome coaches in the world in one place. And people come to Skydive to Land because they want coaching from those people, whether it's Fly for Life, whether it's Flight One, whether it's Skydive University, whether it's Solly Williams. They're coming to us and paying us the money and skydiving those airplanes because of the quality of coaching. Maybe in the future, in the tunnel models, you might want to consider something similar. And I think Paraclete has it. Kirk Werner and some of the staff there, they're pretty hot coaches. You know, they're all pretty big champions. And a lot of people go to Paraclete, not just because it's a 16 and a half foot tunnel. They're going to Paraclete because they're getting awesome coaches and it's worth the money. And I can tell you, when I hire Kirk, even though he's the manager of the tunnel, he doesn't take 50 euros. So I'm just letting you know in your own models, maybe you want to invite some coaches in or breed some coaches that are superstars because that's going to bring more people to your tunnel. not just the first-time customers, but those repeat customers that buy lots of hours and maybe fly overtime. Right? It's just thought.
Thank you, Rob. And we have a comment from Ann.
Can we reply to him?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that everybody should charge 50 euros for the coaching, of course not. What I don't think is normal, and definitely there is coaches that have been very well formed and they have a lot of years of experience and they do charge 200 and 300 euros, and I completely understand. What I don't understand is that someone that has just been on the industry for a couple of months has to charge 200 euros. When you get a, like I said before, you get a doctor that has done 10 years of studying and he gets 40 euros. So
that would be my point as well, Rob, is that, you know, when Greg Crozier goes around Australia as a world champion, etc., then of course he's worth the money, 100%. Tunnel camps and bringing external coaches in is really important. It's when you've got your own coaches who think it's their God-given right to be an employee, but then to go out and work and associate their rates with the same as these quality coaches who are world champions or whatever, and think that they should charge the same rate when they've still got a secure job. And the tunnel industry is in danger of killing itself by allowing its own staff to hire the same facilities and take their own customers. It's a delicate balance. It's a really delicate balance.
I have spent the last 12 years in a sport where the coaches are of an eminence that you will not believe. If you think it's a lot, 300 euros, double that, or even more, and you get to an hourly rate of a coach in dance sport. It's an open market. You cannot really control it, but you can stop abuse, and you have to stop abuse. I mean, as you said, your own employee running a side business.
I think it's the sector we were talking about is not
a no-no.
Not the people who demand the price out of quality.
The most important thing, and that really killed dance sport. These coaches, okay, they become really very dominant in the structure of a federation, in everything. It's a coach, this, that, and ultimately in dance sport, they are going to be the ones judging. And that led to a lot of abuse, to a lot of manipulation in a sport that really moved a considerable amount of money over many years, and nobody really knew about it. And that's the only, my advice to your organization and your companies as an operator, keep an eye on it. But other than that, it's free market. And if somebody deserves an hourly rate of 500, yeah, he deserves it.
We'll come back to you, Anna. Okay, you're going to pick up on that, Andrew.
Well, I'm, as been told before, like I have experience with a whole bunch of different sports, different communities, and on different levels of development. And I do have this feeling that there are a lot of decisions in this sport. I'm struggling to find a word, but sorry, I'm Russian. I'm going to make an excuse now. I do sense some certain greed among every single group of participants, and I think this might be like the problem of the sport. I mean, I understand, like it takes a lot of money to build a tunnel, right? It takes a lot of money to operate, and like this whole thing involves a lot of money. And therefore, like you are trying to make it back, and then you start tightening up the bolts here and there, and like you are trying to squeeze money pretty much from every single thing. And this keeps our community this size. Like I want to say again that the sport and the industry is in quantities. To get these quantities, we need to loosen up just a little bit, every single one. We need to loosen up the manufacturers, we need to loosen up the coaches, we need to loosen up the sportsmen, and we need to give them opportunity to bring more people in. Like I don't get this part about like tightening bolts for the coaches, like particularly like not letting coaches coach. Just they are your marketers, in my opinion. They are your marketers. Those are who are bringing more sportsmen to you, and sportsmen are going to bring more first-timers to you. So coaching for me has always been the dignity of coaches. And when you think about other sports, really, what coach worth? It's going to be a market price. It's like any other thing on the market. Really, your coach is worth the value that it gives to your time. Right? You're going to have cheaper time, like it's going to go down. But really, stop trying to regulate it and give opportunity to people to work and to grow and to expand. We're going to get the numbers. Like, let's get over these few thousand people. And it's going to happen by itself. We're going to have Google paying for everything.
You know, one point I would make is that in many other sports, because you were talking about other sports, you're talking about sports that are not privately operated, and you do have, you know, public authorities that have built the facilities and operate them. So, you know, it's not, as you were just pointing out, it's not exactly the same playing field. But Anne, you had a point to make.
Sorry, I know I've been talking too much the last couple of days. It was something, you know, it's really clear. You know, we've got a bunch of very, very committed, you know, very intelligent manufacturers who are working as hard as possible to make things as safe as possible. I mean, that's obviously really clear. But, you know, there's this massive elephant in the room. We've got anybody can buy a tunnel and start working it. So we've got a whole bunch of the potential to have tunnel operators who can have all of that and can still have very unsafe businesses. They buy a tunnel and they're not obligated to train their staff in a certain way. They can operate in any way, shape or form, let anybody in the tunnel who they decide, and they can put anything in the tunnel that's unsafe. I've seen some of that myself. And we can do as much as we want as an industry, but maybe there should be some basic safety standards that the manufacturers have to put in place and a minimum level of safety before a tunnel operator, when they buy the tunnel. It's not just about paying the money for the tunnel. I mean, I know some technologies do it much more than others, but before you can actually open a tunnel, maybe should be an insistence of a basic set of safety standards that you as an operator must put in place.
I mean, they are here.
Before you can actually open your doors to the public. That's what I'm just saying.
But they are here.
No, but that's what you were talking about, Simon.
It worked 10 years ago. It's already here. It's just up to us to come, pick it up, enforce it, and actually have that.
If we could, friends, because we're starting to run out of time, if we could just go through the guests that we have on the stage for 1 minute to sum up, and then we can continue the conversation outside and continue the conversation through the rest of the day. Okay? So we just have one quick pass along the panel of what you take away as being the main points. Okay? All right, you'll get your thoughts together. It's not fair, but that's okay. Anton is a clear thing. I know, no, he wants to hear everybody else.
That's good. Anton, telling him what to do, right?
Anton, you go first. Sorry.
All right, I'll do it in less than 1 minute. Grassroots, make it a real sport. If possible, make the tunnels not a huge stadium arena, that's impossible, but so that people can actually be there, sit there, watch there. The Madison Square Garden idea is far-fetched, but not such a bad vision to have. Maybe one step on that way is sort of the detour of making a lot of small tunnels that could be cheap that kids or, you know, someone can get started in it with.
Yeah, good summary. Yeah, well, of course, the obvious things that we discussed these days, but I also take away the safety thing. Of course, we're just the aerodynamic designers, but still there might be things that also we could do that could improve safety.
Yeah.
Okay, so of course, I mean, I don't like to repeat this safety that was, I mean, mentioned several times. I think what is missing and what is the future as well is, I mean, to bring more people and audience into the wind tunnel business and flying inside, body flying. which could help a lot of things. Most of them were mentioned, but I think new technologies like virtual reality, augmented reality, yesterday it was mentioned, that's actually something what I see as the future, which can make these things a bit newer and also bring the people for the repeating visitors.
Yeah, I think maybe we went a little bit wrong pace, yeah, and then we start to, especially you guys start to argue which technology is better, yeah. We are not here this is not a sales pitch. This is something we have to, start maybe some new way of cooperation to reconsider how we cooperate as manufacturers. You have your features, and I can talk with you for hours and argue maybe mine are better. Yeah, so that's not the case here. I think that the outcome of this conversation is how we can, talk on the same table and consider maybe you have such a feature that everybody wants. Or I have something that everybody wants, yeah. So the point here is how we can make it implemented to all of industry. That's what I think.
Okay. Well, I'm actually very happy that it's like when Simon said at the beginning, we were not sure why we were coming here, and after we are finishing, I'm realizing what we came here is to grow the whole sport. Like just with the whole thing that everybody's been talking. A lot of us, me, myself, the first one, we're going to go back home thinking, wait a minute, I got to change this, I got to do this, I got to look into this. So I think we should give an applause to that guy that has organized the whole thing, because we have all taken a lot from this, and it's been thanks to you.
Hard to follow. But I would say there's no silver bullet here. There's no magic bullet. It's a combination of all kinds of things. I was saying to somebody yesterday that with wind tunnels today, it's like cars. There's no bad cars around anymore. They're all of a standard. And it's exactly the same with every wind tunnel made around here. They're all good. Now you can talk. I'm not saying that we shouldn't raise the standard. I'm just saying there's no bad wind tunnels. So at the moment, there's no bad wind tunnels. So there is a whole place to play in safety, not just of the equipment. Most of the safety is going to be through the operators, not through the equipment. The equipment is not unsafe at the moment. Sure, can it be improved? Everything can always be improved and developed. But most of the development will come through the operators. And the big thing for me is, how do we grow the sport? So we take everybody's opinions that we've heard today, we put it into the mixing pot. But again, I would just say there's no silver bullet.
Oh, wow. Finally, I was trying to respond to this comment. I think we got a general outline of, if it was a revelation for you, what we're here for, I don't know. I knew that from first actually.
You were the only one putting your hand up.
Yeah.
So for me, it was
I was surprised that everybody overlooked it. I think Roland was very clear with all the messages that he was putting out before the summit. But since we're missing a very big part of the community here, like I can talk only about the manufacturers. Like I do really see a big problem as a lack of education. I mean, like when it comes to technologies and like safety standards, like we do not communicate. Operators communicate separately to each one of us, and they're bargaining each one of us. They're like hiding, or like sometimes, using each other's opinions, but really no one is communicating all together. So for us as manufacturers, I do really think that we should that we should help organizations like Tunnel Instructor International. I do respect the ABA, but I just personally believe that IBA is a little bit tailored to your business particularly, while Alberto done work trying to give a tool to all other tunnels existing, and I think this is what we should enforce. And also it would be I think it will be very beneficial for everybody if we will be able to educate the customers, our customers, operators, and flyers, their customers, flyers, what our tunnels are, and maybe like come up with some certain, I don't know, United certification or something like this, when we have somebody from the side coming and telling us what we can do better. This is why we had tunnel instructor in our tunnel earlier last year, so they can actually just like look through all the things and say what we can do better. And I think we should be all doing it. I think.
Okay. Now, thank you very much. Thank you for the compliment. It was the elephant round I expected it to be. I think a lot of things got covered. And we also kind of said, well, this is not a sales pitch. This is it's an open debate and looking at the bigger picture and on emphasis on common ground. Now this afternoon from 14:15, we're going to have what I call the breakout sessions, the workshops, God knows what. It changed a little bit of format as we went along. You were my initial partners as panelists, because I very deliberately said, let's make it the manufacturers, not the operators, because I think that's where the process starts. The operators can come in later. And you were the first ones to be given the opportunity, 15 minutes. You could this afternoon do whatever you want in terms of presenting your company, your philosophy, your product. Some of you have told me, yes, I will do it. I know that our friend Anton is going to show something that not many of us have seen yet. I know you're going to do something. Tunnel Tech, yes. I mean, you changed the person presenting a few times, but and if any of you, Jan, you sent us a video. If you want that to be shown, you make a few comments. We could do that. I will now establish an order for this whole section of our summit. We have probably potential of up to about 10, 12 presentations. I have some very interesting things in terms of ONG's social responsibility, because I think that's also a key element in any business these days. We had a bunch of virtual reality companies saying, hey, we're going to be there. Yes, we want to present. Now, I think over the last 2 weeks, I had two calling up saying, we're not ready to present yet. It's probably also a good indication of how fast the development in this particular sector. But as I said now, if you want to show something, present something, up to a maximum 15 minutes, that will be possible in the afternoon, starting at 2 o'clock or 2:15, all depending on how many we will have in the end. Everybody else out there that has been advising us that they will do something, I mean, that's Vince, you're going to do something, and quite a few others. And then we're going to wrap up with a part of the summit where the dynamics change, and it's sales pitch after sales pitch, or at least presentation, not with any type of real purpose other than acquainting you with whatever it is that they will acquaint you with. So in terms of the summit itself, Jay and I will start working on this session 10, where we, between all of us here, would like to draft a vision statement. At this vision statement, we would then basically make public and with media and the whole shebang, and hopefully it's going to go out and inspire the world. So this is the remaining program of this summit. Thank you very much once again for your help in making this happen. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it mine or yours? Yours. Yeah.
Hope it will be warm.